This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium. Episode 71,
Semis Map Analysis.
Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson. Oh, I know what to do.
You got it?
Yep.
Is it a bit? Because I don't want to do it.
It's a bit. No, we made it. We're done. It's over.
Okay.
The gauntlet. We're done. We made
That's
it.
fine.
It's over. The prelims are over. Hunter, how do you feel?
Well, we just got done doing 5 games in. Well, you guys, we collectively did 5 games. I only did 2.
And you say we. Why do you say we, Hunter? That's weird. Who's we? It's just you and I.
Oh, well, today we are joined by our guest, and not even really, I wouldn't even call him a guest at this point. It would be
Co-conspirator?
Yeah. Co-moderator and presenter of all of the most of the good digital all the
good digital content.
All the digital content is mostly this. I'm just pointing this out because all of the ones, Matt, that you have released have not gone so well. As far as the videos of the games on YouTube.
They either have not gone well or not, at all. So that's fun.
This is too long of an intro.
We're talking about Alec Keeler. Hey, Alec,
right.
Say hi.
Hey, guys.
We've gotten used to just ranting with Alec for hours and hours on end now. So it was about time to bring him on the episode to see how long we can make this episode go, because we're going to forget where the time went.
We've ranted together for probably a collection of 70 hours.
Right?
I don't know, something like that. Just nonstop talking.
All within like a month and a half. Yeah, pretty. It's been
so our new best friend,
ride.
Alec.
Yeah,
by law. Today we're doing a bunch of things. First things first, we're gonna get into a ton of spoilers for the prelims. Not just because we're covering the last 5 games of the tournament, but more importantly, we're gonna cover all the prelims. We're gonna talk about kind of the statistics we've been keeping and a bunch of stuff. We're gonna talk about how the prelims went. More or less, we're done with the prelims map, right?
Prelims
we'll continue
is over.
to play on it every now and then just because it's kind of a fun map, but we're done with its primary use, which means it's time to break it down, but also say goodbye. And to say goodbye, when we're done with all the prelim stuff, we're gonna talk about the semis map. So everyone who's keeping up with the tournament, get ready, because we're gonna reveal the map today, and we're gonna kind of break down and give all of our really great, wonderful names for the different slices.
Yeah.
So stay tuned to that. In fact, I think maybe Matt from the future is going to jump in here and let us know what time code you can jump to if you just want to hear about the semis map and want to skip the spoilers.
1 hour, 49 minutes, and 42 seconds.
great to hear from you, Matt from the future. I missed you. Why does your voice sound like that though?
No.
Your voice is all different. Why is it all squeaky? Why is your voice all squeaky, Matt from the future? Is it squeakier in the future?
Apparently it was so squeaky in the future.
Matt, in the future, do you finally hit your period? Your period? I'm gonna say puberty.
Puberty, reverse puberty in the future. Okay, we have wasted enough time. We gotta dig into some games, right? Okay,
right.
No, we won't. No, it's fine.
No,
we won't.
do.
No, it's fine.
Digging.
I don't want to.
Let's start
I
digging.
don't want to.
No, we should do it.
Let's do the first
What's the
things
first
first
game?
then. Game 14, which Hunter, Alec, and I need to tell you all about it.
Yes, tell me. I am the audience.
Because you were not there Friday night. Were you there Friday night? I don't remember.
I was
It feels
there
like
for
it
a
was
minute.
years ago.
And
I
then he got
wasn't feeling
distracted by
very
Rocket
good.
League.
Yeah,
you did. You left a couple times for Rocket League.
Right. I played Rocket League, and let me tell you a little bit about how that went. I hadn't played Rocket League in 2 years, and I'm all right. Hunter's still pretty decent. Turns out Rocket League's sort of like riding a bike,
Uh-huh. Well, game 14. Let's go over the factions, right? Because this one the draft was just like more than usual powerful factions getting through. Like SAR got left out in favor of Mentak. That's one of my notes. But here's what the final draft was. We had Trevor as Mentak in Little and Tight. We had Mike as the Federation of Soul in Fast and Cultured, one of the few Soul games. Brad as Barony in Big and Tight. That's fun to say. Paul as Asarl in Darien Slice, one of the few games with Asarl not in Dangerous Diplo. We had Leon as Nalu in Dangerous Diplo, and we had Barney as the Hakan in Slice of the Gashlight. Also one of our few Hakan games.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, how was it?
This game, to give a pretty brief synopsis of it, was defined by the fact that Soul was in the game and didn't mess around, came to party. Soul took a very, very early lead, got to like 5 points really fast, but then spent one round just getting completely attacked by basically all their neighbors and everyone. And then things slipped for them. They had some bad judgment, which gave Barony the room to pull ahead. And essentially it became this weird like hot potato thing of Barony, Asarl, and then Soul still coming back in. Right? Like, Soul got knocked down, but with their early lead, it solidified their position enough to where, in the end, Soul did end up winning. So we had one Soul victory in this tournament in one of the very, very few games Soul made it into.
Yeah. That's cool.
I'm trying to think of like what I could say to like define the Soul strategy here, but more or less like they did the Soul thing, right? They took Mechatol Rex, they took Imperial round 2, and like they got a bunch of points and carried that through to the late game, and it was enough to save their late game. I don't know, Root, what would you say is like anything else of like heavy note to like why Soul ended up with the win in this one?
Oh man. I think it kind of ended up being one of those things where they jumped ahead, got knocked down a peg, and then ignored. And I think we've seen that kind of a lot, where people are like, oh, they're a threat. We stopped them from being a threat, and they're never going to be a threat again.
Completely out of our radar.
And then people frequently kind of claw their way back from that and surprise people with a win. And I think that's pretty much exactly what happened with him this time.
Yep.
I remember the beginning of this game, actually. I remember watching it because I was very excited about Soul being in the game. But because I was like automatically, if somebody picks Soul for some reason, I'm them, basically. I just pretend that I'm playing.
I'm their brain now.
That I'm playing as them. And we differ a lot. It's weird that Mike did, I feel like he did it right. Like he went for Mechatol, but I felt like I wasn't seeing enough orbital drop, and I was really worried for him.
Yeah.
Like I wanted him to win.
That's true.
But like he wasn't doing much. It wasn't doing much of that, and it felt like his tech path was a little weird. I can't remember what happened, but there was something he did round 1 with tech that really flustered me, and I don't remember what it was. Which is pretty much it's useless for me to say.
I don't know, because they got gravity drive. They got gravity drive right away. But they didn't really they ended up because they positioned themselves to take Mechatol Rex as like their first action round.
Yeah, it looks like they got gravity drive with their tech because they had tech first round,
right?
And then took Mechatol. The other thing that you mentioned orbital drop. The one thing that they
a big deal
that they didn't do ever, I believe, which I think is another huge deal. So they never sold their promissory note, military support, which it can be really strong. Like people want that. Two extra ground forces is huge.
Yep.
And if you've spent your strategy tokens, like
they never even offered
nothing
it.
For you.
It's like it wasn't even in play, that game. It just was never brought up. And I like you bringing up the orbital drop thing because I think that's part of what crushed his middle game, right? Was he took the stuff that Soul is supposed to take, but he didn't do that defensive legwork Soul is supposed to do to just like never be touched all game.
Yeah, just lock it down.
They got hit hard in the middle, and because they didn't have all the planets, it was enough to kind of hurt them for a while.
Yeah,
it just,
like
they got
a Mentak got into their slice, and a Mentak should never be able to get into a Soul slice and take planets from you.
Right, it's crazy. So I don't know. Honestly, I feel good leaving game 14 there. A Soul victory in exactly the way you could pretty much expect a Soul victory to come about.
Yeah.
So, you guys need to tell me about Game 15, though, because I was not there.
Oh, well, who was in it?
Well, I can read that to you. Game 15 was, we had Tim as the Yin in Little and Tight. We had Flurkin as the Mentak in Fast and Cultured, Seven as the Extra in Big and Tight, Dan as the L1Z1X in Darien Slice, The Prayer as the Barony of Letnev in Dangerous Diplo, and Toaster as Hakan in Slice of the Gashly. Second game with Hakan and Slice of the Gashly. That's fun.
Yeah.
So this one, just looking at the end score, looks like it was a very, very close finish. How did we get to a score of 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, and 8?
Well, they were all good players, and it was pretty tight. It was a tight game. I feel like this was the one. Was this the one with like one of the games that had like excessive deal making? I feel like, or is that every game? Were all of them that? I think almost every game had excessive deal making.
I feel like this is an episode where it's going to be so important to remind people that we watched 5 games of Twilight Imperium this weekend, and boy, howdy do they run together.
Yeah, I think this game is the one I remember the least, but...
I've got some stuff in my head about it. Like, I remember Seven. So Seven, it was the winner.
His
playing
game was
as
super
extra.
interesting.
Yeah, his game was crazy. I will say this. The objectives were really singing to him. Like, it was that kind of extra victory, but he was, like, really seizing out every opportunity and made, like, basically no mistakes. In a game that was kind of full of mistakes, I feel like.
Yeah, I remember while the game was going, I do remember calling out a lot of things that I didn't love about some of the choices people were making.
Yeah.
But Seven did some interesting stuff. He continued the trend of picking trade and then first round and then winning the game.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We'll talk about that
that's
more later. But
interesting.
there's 7 of those.
Yep. His tech path was also very unusual for extra players. A lot of extra players tend to just go for PDS2 and then some other stuff that feels good. Sometimes Cruiser 2 or sometimes like stuff that you need for objectives or whatever. But he just went green and yellow and went for his racial techs, and that was it. And he nailed it.
Yeah, he actually had very little tech by the end. It was like he had like 6 tech by the end of the game.
Wow.
But that's what I mean, though, is that in a lot of ways, he made a lot of choices that were smart and good, and also it was not a game that really like choked extra out, which I feel like we see plenty of games where it's just like these VPs are not lining up for them. So yeah, he was not really excluded in any way, but yeah, he just played a really tight game. I really liked his deal making style. He just like didn't really waste a lot of time, and he would just go straight for like a good deal, basically.
Yeah, Seven's win here was not a surprise to me at all. I don't know the other players. Actually, I know Toaster a little bit, but Seven has played so many games of freaking Twilight Imperium.
Right.
He plays on TTS a lot.
He said it today. 150 plus games,
and that is not an exaggeration.
In the last 2 weeks, he has played 13 games.
Yep, like this is the thing that he does when he's not working or spending time with his family. It is this, and that is it.
Yeah. He was really interesting to watch, to the extent where afterwards I kind of got like the idea of just wanting to have like an invitational stream and just have a bunch of like kind of weird, interesting players play. Cause like like the tech
he's
path
known
was
for
really
being
strange.
weird too, right?
Yeah,
like he's always been weird.
Yeah,
he does
weird
loves
stuff.
Ghost of Creus. He does weird stuff, doesn't he? All the time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all I ever hear about him is like really strange plays that he does.
Yep.
He also didn't like double down on he built the flagship, but he didn't. Yeah, like he didn't get PDS too, so like he wasn't really like doubling down on PDS or even building a lot of PDS.
Right.
He just kind of threw the flagship out there, made it I think a couple plays with it, and that was
the funny thing. The funny thing about the PDS actually is that his lack of PDS almost cost him the game. There was a play in the penultimate round where he needed to bombard a ground force, so he had built a couple dreadnoughts and he moved into the Mentak slice where he had a cruiser. Actually, the Yin had the cruiser in this slice. He had taken over this spot. The Yin had a cruiser and a ground force there, and he was able to skilled retreat out of there because 3 PDS shots from the flagship all missed. And there was no plasma scoring. There was no PDS2 from the PDS that he had nearby. So he failed to kill the cruiser and couldn't kill he couldn't bombard the ground force that he needed for that extra point. He had to find a way to do that the next round, which was kind of a tough Like he had to scramble for that. He had to wait out warfare by wasting 3 or 4 extra tokens.
Wow. Well, that's crazy. Can I tell you guys about game 16?
Oh,
Yes.
please do.
Which was my game last night, Saturday night. This one was another fairly decent spread with a Sardak and a Muat sneaking into the draft. But the biggest thing to note about this group was this is the quietest game we have had. If you're going to watch game 16 on YouTube, don't expect it to be a thrilling ride of espionage and negotiation, because it is a group of methodical, quiet players. Especially in the first 2 rounds where, there's not even that many reasons. Like, if there's not a reason to butt heads with somebody, they would not speak to each other. So it's absolutely silent for so much of this game. We had Chris as the Muat in Big and Tight. We had Shalev as the L1Z1X in Darien Slice. We had Woody as the Isarl in Dangerous Diplo. We had Matt as the Sardak Nor in Slice of the Gashly. We had Peter as the Yin in Little and Tight, and we had Eric as the Nalu in Fast and Cultured. So this one, let me just give you my breakdown, and then I'll try to get into some more specifics. But Muat made early moves for Mechatol Rex and jumped on it, but then they didn't really make all the deals they needed to make to protect themselves. So they just jumped out to Mechatol Rex.
Right.
And you think of that as that could work as a Muat, right? Muat, War Sun above Mechatol Rex, in some cases can have the same situation as a Yin with all their ground forces on Mechatol Rex, or a Soul in the right scenario. But in this one, Muat didn't do any of the legwork on the Slice. They ended up, actually what they did was they made deals with Isarl, who were not their neighbor. That was the neighbor of their neighbor, right? But Isarl could have gone through the beta wormhole to get into their stuff, but then they didn't talk to their 2 neighbors. So they ended up just getting completely gutted by the L1Z1X, who was their neighbor. And that ended up to L1 getting a lot of power very fast, because L1 had, most of Muat's Slice and their own, and were getting lucky objectives. And when the L1 slowed down a little bit in the mid to late game, Muat, Isarl, and Yin caught up, but nobody could stop. He had gained too much power just by all of his early gains, where it was a little bit similar to that Soul victory, where he earned enough early on where it carried him through to the late game for a victory, which was our very first and only victory in Darien Slice.
Oh,
Very
wow.
underperformed Pie Slice, Darien Slice. Almost didn't get a single win. Yeah, I mean, the big defining thing was that Muat... I feel bad for the Muat player in this game, because they spent the whole game, technically in some sort of point lead, but never with a strong position on the board, and everyone was still constantly we got to deal with Muat. We got to completely screw up Muat. We got to crush them under our thumb, and they were just never getting the target taken off of their back, despite always being tied for the leader or a point below the leader. And so they were just getting absolutely decimated all game, and it was hard to see. I mean, they had an amazing game despite that fact, essentially. I have to give applause to them, because they ended the game at 9 despite being attacked essentially relentlessly the entire game.
Well, that sounds like the Muat story to me.
Yeah.
That actually sounds like a good game for Muat, but they were at least an actual threat instead of just a perceived threat.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I would say this is another one of those games where the L1 ended up winning, but it's another situation where an L1 or a strong faction could have won a round or 2 earlier than they did if they had just pushed for it more, but they kind of took that slow, safe path. And they ended up winning, but if you didn't catch it, I said there were 3 other people that were tied for maybe getting the victory with them. Muat, Isarl, and Yin and the L1 were all playing hot potato for the victory, and L1 happened to come out on ahead. But if they had really been aggressive in round 3 and 4, they could have won, I believe, just in the middle of round 5. Or I forget the exact scenario, but they could have easily won round 5 early on. I think even at the end of round 4. Wow. And that's been we'll talk probably more about this in the overview of all of them, but I started to get just seeing everything globally and seeing how often people's needs interact with each other. it's not worth it to sit on an objective when you have it. I don't agree with that philosophy at all anymore. If you can score an objective, you should score it. And if you're only like one small step away from being able to score objective, you should take the step to score that objective. There were multiple times where people would like not score discard 5 action cards even though they had action cards, or not score ships and 6 systems or whatever, like little things like that where it's just like, oh, I don't want to take that lead. I don't want to take the lead that makes me look scary. But it's like, if you're in the lead, just you need to finish it out, because you're probably already going to get attacked and you might lose your chance to score those points later. There's a few objectives that are especially susceptible to that kind of behavior.
There was
and also we have plenty of examples of games where somebody got called out for being the leader and then crawled back. I mean, we just got done talking about that Soul game where that's exactly what happened.
Right.
So
yeah, it's true. Alec, what were you going to say?
The one thing I wanted to say about that is that we did have one game in this tournament, the one that Jolnar, played by Janor, won, where he specifically and intentionally held back scoring a secret objective in the penultimate round so that he could seem like less of a threat than he was, because a couple other people pulled ahead of him. And that ended up, that specific thing helped him stay under the radar enough to win the game.
It's true. It's true.
So
I think
by and large you're right, but once in a while there can be a good reason if you're really smart about it.
We should just call this out, because this is just something that goes very much against Matt's like core being, basically.
Right.
This is a very Matt thing to be saying.
It is.
Oh, like, no, you got to score. You got to do whatever it takes. You know what I mean? Like, you got to do whatever it takes. You got to throw the carrier through the rift with one guy on it to get the one control objective. And if you don't make it, well, then that's because everybody hates you.
I think to prove my point, I then need to also tell you about Game 17.
Oh, how dare you!
Yeah.
All I know about Game 17 is how all the chat messages you sent us in Discord. Like these chat messages, man.
I was predicting a new winner every 30 seconds.
Yeah, he was like, it's a Sarl. Sarl's got it. Oh, wait, there wasn't even a Sarl in that game.
There wasn't.
But it's extra. Extra's got it. No.
Let me tell you.
Letnev's got it. L1, though, has pulled ahead. I think L1's got it. Unless Nalu gets it. It could be one of the 6 players. Hey, breaking news, guys. I'm pretty sure one of these 6 are going to win.
Someone's going to win this game. This one was like one of the most standard drafts I feel like we've seen. Just like very cut and dry. The weird thing with the actual selecting of factions, though, was Extra got picked like almost right off the bat. So in a pool of like decent to stronger factions, Extra got nabbed up really fast. So we had Robbie as the L1 in Dangerous Diplo, Gino as Muat in Slice of the Gashly, there's the combo, Ron as Extra in Little and Tight, Chris as Barony in Fast and Cultured, Frederick as Nalu in Big and Tight, and Ben as Yin in Darien Slice, another combo.
Yeah.
So I have too many notes on this game because of all the crazy hot potato madness that was going on. But I'll say this much: Extra took Diplo round 1. There were some screw-ups. Because of Diplo. Muat did the secondary of Diplo to refresh Aaron Namir and then didn't do anything with Aaron Namir. I think they had intended to be able to gain some trade goods and spend an early 8 influence objective, but trade did not get picked that round. And you know, if you've put the blinders on, you'll forget that trade didn't get picked and you just assume you can get extra money, and so they were not able to score that objective like they were probably planning to.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, this one was a lot of really like sly territorial deals from the Barony of Letnev early on, getting them all of the really difficult objectives out of the way. Like they got 4 of the same trait and 3 tech objectives, 3 tech specialties, like right away. Those were like their first 2 objectives. We're getting those out of the way. Nice. And then from there on out, it was like spendy objectives and whatnot. So there were some support for the throne swaps that kept L1 and Extra to be in the lead with Barony, but that's kind of walking on eggshells with support for the throne. So realistically, Barony had this lead, and they more or less had a completely passive route to victory. And that's when I was messaging you guys, being like, it's like round 2 or 3, and Barony has like the clearest shot I've ever seen for someone to win. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then Wormhole research came out Barony had the combo, right? Barony had non-Euclidean shielding and Duranium armor. He was getting lots of dreadnoughts out, and wormhole research came, and it passed, so he had to kill everything in wormholes, and he had 2 systems full of ships in wormholes. At the end of that agenda, he had 1 dreadnought left on the board, and that was the entirety of all of his fleets.
Oh my god.
Was 1 dreadnought. So the Barony with nothing to lose, and he was doing the work too, right? Like it was going to be a really amazing story to tell, because it was like you got all the hard stuff out of the way, you built units while getting the hard stuff. You're Barony, so like now your stuff is untouchable, and now you just need to coast. You literally get tech objectives and spend influence and resource objectives, and you win the game, easy. But you lose your whole fleet, and you kind of have to come up with a new story. So suddenly everyone was in the game, and we had a situation where Yin was pushing for it, Xcha was pushing for it. By the end of the game, it was really all about Barony and Xcha, and at one point, Xcha gave up the opportunity to score discard 5 action cards. They also they decided to take 1 round too slow. We had the spend 6 command counters objective. And they did one of those rounds where it's like, you know what, I would rather build up this round than spend those 6 command counters. But if they had spent the 6 command counters and got their discard 5 action cards, they would have been at 9 points as Xcha with a flagship and 2 PDS adjacent to their home system with an automatic point in the bag. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't automatic. They would have to take like 1 planet to score their final objective, but their home system would be completely protected. So a little bit of risk, but taking that fast lead. And at the end of the game, Xcha and Barony were kind of doing this little dance, but it ended up being, since they didn't do the command counter thing, they were no longer able to do the command counter thing from that point forward. I might be getting that wrong. They eventually got it, but they at some point they ended up too far behind to make it up, and they basically needed to do like this Hail Mary pass. It was going to be a cool play if it worked, because the only way Xcha could have won is if they took an industrial planet and they had mining initiative and industrial initiative, and that would have got them 8 trade goods between those 2 action cards, and the 2 already on their sheet would have been the 2 points they needed to win. But because they couldn't take that final industrial planet, they were 1 trade good shy of victory in the end.
Wow.
And Barony basically got to coast to victory in the last round because he was just sitting on 7 command counters, and all he had to do was score that point. So it really was, the final round was all about, if Xcha had done the work on the front end, he would have been the one coasting to victory, but instead Barony was coasting to victory. So that's why I think there's value in like getting that lead if you have the position to solidify it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's situations where you've stretched yourself too thin, and that's dangerous. But if you can get the things you need to get, and then also like protect yourself, I think you should do that.
Yeah,
I think it's this game, or it was game 16, where I also watched a Nalu for like 3 rounds in a row not get 6 ships in or get ships in 6 different systems, which was just so irritating. No, it wasn't even. Man,
that's funny, because
so
that happened in the game in our last game.
I've seen. It was actually 2 games back to back that it was the same issue twice. In one of them, it was the player needed to research Fighter 2, and they could have done it easily. Right. But they just decided not to get Fighter 2, and they kept putting off that objective, and they never ended up scoring that objective. But I forget what that player was. So anyways, I'm going to quit pleading my case about Game 17.
Yeah, well, I think it's crazy there's been so much good Xcha play lately. Just in general. I mean, it sounds like your Xcha in this game basically had it, except for a misplay, basically.
Yep.
They basically had 10.
And it's like, you can't even fully call it a misplay. It was like opted for a different strategy, and that strategy ended up to work out worse.
But yeah, the road they took did not lead there. And we just got done talking about in game 15, 7 won with Xcha. I wanted to also point out, this actually reminded me of something. 7 picked Xcha in the draft well before it made sense to me
that's what
personally.
This was like. That's what this was. This was like second pick Xcha.
I think people in general were looking at the map and saying like, all right, super balanced map. So Xcha is probably better than average. Like better than Xcha would be normally, because you're guaranteed a fair shake. You're guaranteed a fair slice. So if you play a defensive faction, you're probably going to be able to accomplish a lot more natural victory points than you
Yeah.
would in another map.
In
So,
theory,
I think it
but we
makes
saw
sense.
a lot of extras crash and burn though. That's
That's
sure,
true too.
over the
I
course
still
of the
think
tournament.
they're a rough faction that have some real
Yeah.
limitations. I also want to point out in this game 17 that we're talking about, and I won't lie, I'm kind of glad this extra did not win. I was rooting against them because they picked diplomacy round 1.
Yes.
And they picked diplomacy round 1, and they were the third pick. I
Yep,
could see
that's
that
exactly
right there.
correct.
They were
Yep.
the third. Politics hadn't been picked. They
Nope.
could have picked politics,
Nope.
and they didn't. They opted not to take
wanted their whole
diplomacy
slice.
round 1. They just, what is it with you people? Like,
Hey, I'll say this much: it threw off the Muat player and made them make some mistakes. I think
Sure.
there's a tiny amount of value, not much. It's not worth picking, but there is a tiny amount of value. And if you pick diplomacy, you're going to make at least one player make some mistakes.
right? That's true. That's true.
Hey,
Probably.
guys, I want you two to tell me about game 18.
Oh, boy,
but
game
I think we have to
18.
do this in 2 phases. I want you to tell me about the game of 18,
And then the win.
and then we can talk about the win.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
so as a game, this was, I think, this is certainly one of the tightest games I got to observe. So just to break it down, we had Schnooker playing as Ghost of Creus in Slice of the Gashly, which was exciting. We had John playing as Extra in Little and Tight. We had Jack Bauer playing as Nalu in Fast and Cultured. We had Habbo playing as Mentak in Big and Tight.
Nope. That was Patience.
Oh, yeah, Patience as Mentak. Patience is a virtue as Mentak in Big and Tight. Yeah, you're right. And then we had Shark playing as Sar in Darien Slice. And we had Habbo playing as L1 in Dangerous Diplo. All very good players. There's a lot of different styles too going in. Schnooker did a lot of interesting stuff as Kriya. Schnooker was able to get Warsun. Warsuns on the board, not just research Warsuns, but got them on the board and did a thing with them, and it was very,
a good
very
thing.
fun.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That's
it
all I
was super
wanted
cool.
from that slice. Like the entire tournament, all I ever wanted was for Slice of the Gashly.
He did
to
it for
get
you,
in the
man.
Hands of the Krius.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I needed it.
And
I
he
wanna-
had an interesting style of like trade that was very different from some of the other players that kind of brought up a lot of contention, which I think is important to note. Schnooker had a more straightforward, here's the deal, this for this, kind of just straightforward and even. And then we had probably one of the best Mentak players I've seen in the tournament, in Patience is a Virtue. Who was doing the kind of more classic, like, I'm going to try and work as many deals as possible, as many angles as possible. He had a lot of, I will not do this, or okay, we will make a deal where I will not pillage from you for even a certain amount of rounds. There were deals he would offer up where I won't pillage for you for 3 rounds if you do fill in the blank. Right. So he was a deal maker. And he had a lot of interesting, he got a lot out of his faction. What were you about to say, Root, though?
I wanted to talk about the first 2 rounds because I thought they were very interesting. First, with Ghost picking trade, he got some really good value. He made, as you said, very straightforward, very simple, very easy deals with his neighbor, the Extra, and the Nalu player in Fast and Cultured. And the thing that I liked about it the most was that both of those players came to him. He did not go out to meet those
and
trade
he's Ghosts. He has all the room in the world to go to them.
Yep, and both of them came to him. Which leads into the other very interesting thing that happened in round 1. The Nalu sent their destroyer through the Alpha Hole into Lodor in order to make that trade, which ended up being super important the next round. The other thing that the Nalu did was they took Warfare and they moved out their initial fleet to Kornik Resculon and built a fleet at home. And I would have expected, my plan, just not even thinking about Mechatol Rex, would be to Warfare, use that Warfare to take the token off my home system and take Centauri Grawl. And just fill out the back of my slice. But
Get your slice.
he took the token off of Kornik Resculon and took Mehar Zul. And I at first was like, I don't like this. I don't like this.
Right. Only one planet,
yeah.
3 influence.
Yeah,
red skip.
it's less efficient. But he, the next round, took Mechatol Rex right away.
Yeah,
and
as Nalu. I get it. Yeah, that's great. So
Yep.
just like an unblockable jump on Mechatol
Yep,
Rex.
and
That
the-
is a power of being Nalu.
And the
It's like,
only
you'll
person-
never get that stopped.
The only person who could contest him for the rest of the round at Mechatol Rex would have been the Ghosts, who had a destroyer in the way.
Yep.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in fact, we had been talking about, we think that Krius took trade round 1 because they're getting ready to make a play for Mechatol round 2. That was our idea, because basically nobody else could get there except for Nalu, and Nalu went into the second round and picked political. So we basically got to round 2, Nalu gets the Custodian's token and is set up to take Imperial round 3. And I think there was we mapped it out at one point. It was like Nalu had the potential to come into round 3 with like 4 points, like
Yeah.
at the end of round 3 with 4,
Yeah.
Yep.
which would have been really wild. He did get, they did do something about it though.
Yep. They,
Collectively, he got he got like late game, whole table versus him type stuff. Like we've talked
Yeah.
about before with Soul. It was like that, except for the table won. They did successfully.
they
They
tore
got
him apart.
Yeah, to the point where he didn't even take Imperial that round. He didn't even take Imperial in the third round because they were making so much headway against him that he was like, "There's no
I
point in
can't.
me."
Yeah, I
doing
got to get the
that
heat
stuff."
off me. Right.
Right.
So another interesting thing that happened round 1 happened between the Mentak and the SAR, where
Yeah.
the Mentak put one of their cruisers in the gravity rift between them and the SAR player. Before the SAR player took Arnor Lore, the system in
Yep.
front of their home system, because SAR went to the left first. So he was going to come to that system, Arnor Lore, take those planets, gain 2 trade goods, and already have 2 trade goods. And guess what happens when you
Right.
gain 1 trade good 2 times when you're next to the Mentak? You're going to
Wow,
get
yeah.
pillaged 2 times. So
Wow.
Patience, the Mentak player, made a deal for in exchange for his promise of protection. He gained the SAR player's 2 trade goods and ceasefire, which he held on to for quite a bit of the game.
Wow. Early
And-
ceasefire from SAR is a big deal.
Yep, and then
Yes.
they kind of formed this little alliance, and they exchanged support for the thrones a few rounds later, and pretty
Wow.
much that held straight the whole game.
Yeah, yeah. Patience
So-
was a very straight shooter, even if he was trying to make a lot of deals. He was very he was true to his word. He made a lot of non-biting agreements, and he did not break any of them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so he basically got that leverage on SAR and then translated that into an informal alliance, and that never ended. So he was worried about SAR, and he took care of it really quickly, very
Yeah.
quickly.
So walk me through how we get to the late game build-up. Who are the main players in the penultimate round or in the final round? And then let's talk about what happened.
So the SAR very effectively and very efficiently built up their SAR balls. They had one of their secret objectives was to build 5 dreadnoughts, and I mean that's good when you're the SAR. Just build a couple big, hefty looking fleets, and it worked out really well. And he had a lot of weight to throw around, and took Mechatol Rex for a while, and no one could really kick him off of there. And
Right.
yeah, it was great. And then there was a point at which the L1's fleet was actually pretty strong as well. He ended up with Super Dread 2s around midway through the game, and his flagship, and was able to take on some of the smaller SAR balls. And then the Ghosts of Krius got their War Sun tech, as mentioned, and their flagship as well, and they managed to fly across the board and take out one of L1's bigger fleets because he needed to unveil his flagship. And I think also... Oh, he did that earlier. He needed to bombard, which he did with the War Sun, and that was great. That was so there were a couple of exciting fights kind of midway through the game, and that was really fun. The X Job mostly stayed in their slice. They went to Mehar Zul very briefly, as in like an amicable agreement with the Nalu, and then that was pretty much it. There were a lot of spend objectives in this game. There were only 2 objectives that were for control. There was 6 planets and 3 tech specialties, so it was a lot of trade, a lot of spending planets and stuff at the end of the round. Mentak built up a huge horde, and there were so many agendas this game that were great. There was economic equality at one point, which was almost a huge blow to the Mentak, but the board kind of got greedy and opted for the choice to give everyone 5 trade goods. So Mentak,
which was a mistake.
It was a huge mistake.
Wow.
It was a huge mistake. They went from 12 trade goods down to 9 after their pillages because they were neighbors with everyone.
The first agenda, or it was either first or second agenda, was representative government. So for the entire game,
the whole
they
game,
each
they're just
only
on equal
had
footing.
one vote. Yeah, which honestly made the agenda phases really fun because
Yeah, it was great.
there wasn't a lot of variable to it, so like they had to talk it out, but it actually felt like it made the conversations flow a lot faster because everyone knew at most that I've got a vote to throw into this.
Yeah,
and
it contributed
really
to
cool.
the speed of the game a lot.
Yeah. I wanted to mention on some of these factions we've already talked about, I want to call attention to how much L1 got out of the flagship. L1 was very efficient with the flagship and made a lot of really great plays and made me remember how good that flagship is. Do you remember that it has capacity 5? Because I forgot that.
I hate
it has
that.
5
It's the
capacity.
worst.
Isn't that crazy that it has that?
I think Alec and I got onto a really big tangent in one of our games talking about that. We were just like, oh yeah, remember how this amazing ship with this amazing faction also has more than average capacity for no reason?
Yeah, well, like, what's the
funny.
theme there? But yeah, that ship is so great. And I also wanted to note that Extra, when we say that Extra was sitting back in his slice, I mean that, like, so he went kind of classic Extra, like PDS2 kind of route.
Yep.
But he did not build a very aggressive PDS network, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it was
it
very
was a
defensive.
very it was not like, it wasn't like he was he didn't have any PDS. Like if you went to Mechatol,
forward,
you had to
right.
worry about one. That was it.
Oh wow.
His flagship
PDS
stayed
with
at home
like-
the whole time.
Wow.
So he played a super defensive Extra, like the most defensive
Yeah.
I've seen probably in the tournament. Well, also L1 was kind of it was kind of interesting the way things shifted a little bit because basically as SAR kind of had a rough early game having to contend with Mentak like that. And then also like not being able to just go straight for Mechatol because of Nalu, I feel like also kind of slowed them down. But then in the mid game, they really recovered. And once they had Mechatol, L1 kind of instantly started sniping their slice. And it was funny because it was like L1 is going for SAR, and then Ghost just kind of followed L1 into it with the War Sun.
Yep.
That is essentially, there was this very competitive side of the galaxy between Krias, L1, and then SAR. And then Mentak and Nalu had a lot of tension, and then Extra was just kind of
Just a little turtle
just kind
shell.
of free. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Like not only was Extra the turtle faction, but the way the board state was shaped was really pro that player sitting out, you know? Like it
Gotcha,
wasn't
right.
he wasn't dealing with like an aggressive Krias like trying to
No,
snipe
right.
planets from him. Krias was pretty much preoccupied the entire time. L1 and SAR were pretty tangled up in like a traditional like SAR goes to do this thing and then somebody starts coming up the other end and stuff.
Yeah.
So they traded a lot of blows. And Nalu kind of just like hung on because of how their early game went, but like really, I mean, should we start talking about the late game at this point? Are we ready to go there?
I want to talk about
Yeah.
2 more things real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
There were a couple of mistakes. One an individual mistake, and one a board mistake. The board mistake is another agenda that was a mistake that people passed, which was Swords to Plowshares.
Yes.
Which for
We had
people
one of
who
those.
don't know is if it passes, every player loses half of the ground forces they have on every planet, and for every ground force you lose, round it up, which is important, and then you gain a trade good for every one that you lose, or you add 1 infantry to every planet that you have. And the board decided to pass it, and at this point, 16 resources had just come up. This was like the last agenda, and
We
Mentak
had 10
mirror
trade goods
computing.
come up.
Yep,
with the same
and mirror
situation.
computing. Mentak had mirror computing and had gone down to just like 2 trade goods or something in the last round,
Oh,
and gave him enough. They passed it and gave him
Yep.
enough trade goods to very easily score those 2 points. Whereas without it, he'd have had to scrape it clean.
So game 17 had Swords to Plowshares come up in our second to last round or our second to last agenda phase as well or whatever, and our team was lucky enough to catch it because if they had passed it, Xcha would have had more than enough trade goods for their final round.
Yeah.
But they did see it. But that is a scary agenda.
Yeah.
For
Then the weird thing that I wanted to kind of call out was Nalu's tech path. Because they did not take Grawl in the first round, they didn't have a blue skip.
Yep.
So they did not end up getting Hybrid Crystal Fighter 2s until very late in the game. Because since they skipped it, they decided to just go down the green path, and they got
so they put it off till after Neuroglaive. Okay.
Yeah, they got Neuroglaive pretty quick, but then they had Fighter 2s very, very late. And they also had the secret objective, control the region, to spread out ships into 6 systems, and they were never able to do that because by the time they had Crystal Fighter 2s, there was a PDS network set up on their right and a PDS network from the Mentak set up on their left, and they just couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, I think I think that's a theme that I've seen in a lot of Nalu players that I have been calling out basically since we did the first round strategy guide for them, which is I think sometimes people get thrown off by Neuroglaive. They get too excited about it. And I don't see it as I see Hybrid Crystal Fighter 2 as like way more essential, just in a general strategy, like always probably going to be useful.
Right. Yeah. Well, because you cannot utilize Neuroglaive to its fullest potential without Hybrid Crystal
Exactly.
Fighter 2.
For sure.
Hybrid Crystal Fighter 2 is what unlocks the pure potential of Neuroglaive.
Yeah. It's the gum.
It's the gum.
It's the gum.
And somehow Neuroglaive is the
works.
Yeah. So all right. So walk me through your favorites going into the last round, and then let's talk. Let's just jump to like what happened.
Oh, it was it was anybody's game going into the last round. Oh, well, not anybody's, but it was. Yeah, I remember feeling like it was going to be pretty wild as far as who might win. Mentak had the most solid path going into what was definitely going to be the final round. And by solid, I just mean they didn't have to do a lot. Right. But that did not necessarily mean that they were going to win going into the final round.
They had to stop people. They had to stop people.
Yes, that's true. They had to stop Nalu from winning because obviously Nalu comes earlier in initiative order. And Nalu had Imperial in the final round.
Ouch.
Xcha had leadership in the final round, so Xcha would have scored before Mentak. Xcha had a pretty wonky path.
They
did not
would
seem
have
super likely.
Yeah, they had scored all their secrets. They'd scored all the easy publics. They would have needed to gain some trade goods and account for the inevitable pillage from Mentak in order to gain 16 resources to spend. And there's no way that I know of that they could have gotten that, so I don't think they would have won.
I agree. Even if for some reason, I believe SAR had a route to 10 points, even though SAR would have scored after Mentak. But I don't know. You could have made, I think even at one point I went over to L1 Slice and was like, can I get to 10?
Yeah,
and
L1 could have, but he was scoring, he would have been scoring 4th with politics because of Nalu. So if it got to him,
it was... But it was likely going to come down to initiative order. It felt like one of those,
right?
Where it was like we got a couple people that probably earned it, but who is going to score first? That's what's going to make the difference.
So I keep bringing this up really ominously. So I think it's time to tell the listeners what happened. Hunter, what's the juice?
Well, here's what happened. Me and you before we started this tournament, we had a discussion. We talked and we were like, what do we do if somebody does a support for the throne for the win? And we were like, well, we're not going to make some sort of homebrew rule. Like we're doing the pre-made, everything that happens before the game starts, the pre-game. Yeah. Obviously, that's like our kind of homebrew thing for the tournament. But honestly, in the rule book, it's not very well defined. And besides our weird drafting thing in the pre-made map, I kind of felt like we were both in favor of just like, no, we just need to let the game be the game. And the result of that is that Schnooker playing as Ghost of Creus, because of, I think, a lot of animosity between his style of play and Patience is a Virtue's style of play as Mentak, decided to kingmake, to give extra support for the throne in the action phase of what would have been the last round, and extra won at that point. And I do feel like the reason they did it is because they could see, like how we could see, that the most likely person to win was the Mentak player.
Right.
And I was pretty shocked, honestly.
Yeah.
I was surprised that somebody did that. I do see the meta of it. Like, it was like
Sure.
they had clashed. It sucks because I can't really remember exactly what their disagreements were, except for that Schnooker in general just kept saying, you guys need to be like, you guys are letting Mentak get away with a lot. And to be fair to him, they were. Like, Mentak was getting, like, we've already mentioned how they messed up in 2 agendas where they could have maybe
Mentak,
cut down Mentak's trade goods. Mentak had a lot of trade goods and got mirror computing. But yeah, like the end result of that was, I mean, that is how the game ended, and that's so weird. That's how the prelims end.
This happened in a secret conversation, right? And
It
Root,
did.
you were there.
I was
So
there.
what was the actual? Because this is the question that I think always comes up, and this is what I think all the listeners will want to know. And if they don't want to watch the whole game, I want to make sure we cover this. So, who made the actual offer? And Extra, as the recipient, how did they recognize that this was something that would be disliked by many players, and were they cool with that? I mean, that is a thing, right? Like, a lot of players would say, well, I wouldn't take that. I'm honorable. I wouldn't do something like that. And it's like, well, you're not actually faced with the choice to do it, so we don't know what you would do.
Yeah.
So walk me through Extra's decision to accept this deal.
Okay, so first and foremost, this was not actually the first secret conversation that Xjaw was involved in in the last round.
Oh,
Before
right.
he actually had a secret conversation with the L1Z1X player. The L1Z1X player, or the Xjaw actually initiated this because he knew he needed some extra trade goods in order to score those 16 resources. Like that had to be it. That was the way he was going to win. So the L1Z1X,
And we've seen this. We've seen this in many games before today, right?
Yep.
We've seen multiple games where it's like, I need 2 trade goods. How am I going to swindle somebody out of 2 trade goods? I got to go talk to everybody.
Yep.
We've seen it time and time again.
Yep. So he talks to the L1Z1X. He offers his support for the throne, which would have put L1 at 8, I believe. Let me look. Yes, at 8. And the L1Z1X was sitting pretty on a ton of resources, on a ton of trade goods, like 10 trade goods, and had like 15 resources and planets. Like he had great resources, so he was not worried about resources. So he had plenty. So Extra knew he could spare some, and offered his support for the throne for I think 4 trade goods. And L1Z1X eventually agreed after a few minutes of discussion. And I was surprised by this because to me it was very obvious that this was handing Extra the game. And L1 kind of didn't seem to really be appreciating that was going to happen. And then it became L1's turn. He became neighbors with the X-Shaw so that they could make this exchange by like fighting some tiny Sarball in Lodor. And then the trade didn't happen. And L1 like straight up said a few minutes later, like, hey, I realized I can't make this trade because I'd be handing you the win. Like he had thought about it.
He caught it.
He had looked at stuff and he eventually realized I can't do this. Great. Between those things happening, if the Ghost initiated this conversation with the X-Jaw and asked him to step into a secret conversation, and X-Jaw was like, okay, sure, I don't know what this is about, but fine. And he didn't even ask for anything. Schnooker just offered. He said, I don't want the Mentak to win. I would prefer it be you. I'm going to offer you the support for the throne. Would you take it? And the extra player just said yes. He just said yes. It was a very fast, very simple conversation. There was no negotiation. The Ghost didn't ask for anything. He just offered it, and the extra said yes. So they went back to the main room, and it eventually it was kind of funny. It kind of dragged out for a few minutes because Hunter and I knew this was coming now, and the Mentak player and the SAR player had to take turns, and they were like trying to figure out how to stop both the X-Shaw somehow, and
it's like the worst example of when you're waiting for one person to win because you're waiting for someone to win in the way you never wanted someone to win.
Yeah, and like the Mentak used their Minister of War card to start just tearing the Nalu apart so they couldn't make good use of Imperial, and it was working. And then the SAR ball started moving in that direction as well to maybe help against X-Shaw somehow as well. And it finally became Schnooker's turn. He was going last in initiative order. And he took Mechatol Rex, which was now open, made him neighbors with the X-Chaw, and they ended up trading support for the thrones for all that matters because the Xja still had his and hadn't given it to L1. And that was it. That's the end of that story.
That's the end of the game.
Let's talk about that real quick then,
Oof.
because this is going to spark outrage in some players. I know it sparked outrage in Patience is a Virtue for a little while in the Discord. I think he eventually calmed down.
His Canadian anger really came out. Yeah,
but yeah, right. Oh man, this is really. I'm really chuffed. But okay, well, I love you all, and good night. So this is legal, and it is part of a TI. And in a tournament setting, it is obviously weird to see it. But I think we have to go on record saying, we've been on record saying this before, right, Hunter? Like on this show, we have talked about this is part of Twilight Imperium. It's the really seedy underbelly of Twilight Imperium, but there is a part of anything in Twilight Imperium that is, I have to sometimes choose darkness or I have to choose the light. and players at all moments are deciding how they want to do this. And I want to give a defense of this act, and I want to give my criticism of this act. But in defense of this act, I am one of those people that believes anytime you swap points for someone, you are still in effect leading to this result, right?
Sure.
You could take any action throughout the game and say, because you let so-and-so do something, you gave them the opportunity to win. I know. I'm not saying this is a rock solid foundation, but I'm saying there is precedence for the idea of, like, in TI, we give things to people we like sometimes. Hey, I trust you. Let's make this deal. This is a little bit favorable. Maybe you'll scratch my back later. I've had trades, I think even today, where like someone said, hey, will you refresh me or can I want to refresh you. Maybe you'll give me a trade good later. You probably won't, but I'm just going to go ahead and refresh you anyways. and hopefully when we're neighbors, you'll give me a trade good, but I don't think I'm ever going to see that trade good. And it's like, this happens. It's a political game. Sure. So we have to accept that these political things will happen. If the ghosts get dunked on by everybody and the whole time they're complaining about how much everyone is letting the Mentak get away with stuff, why would they want the Mentak to win? They don't feel like they've been given a fair shake, right? To me, it sounds like this game was described by a lot of, SAR just started chasing down Ghosts, right? Like, SAR just started losing a lot of stuff.
Well, and SAR used signal jamming on Ghost War Sun. So that's what happened. He had everything in one thing. And
right. But at the end of the day... It
wasn't like Ghost was completely out, but no, it wasn't looking good.
Sure. So we have to accept that these kinds of things happen. That being said, we flip to the other side, which is obviously no one wants to see this in a tournament. It's not our favorite way to see a game end. We had 17 games that didn't end even close to this. This is the only time anything like this happened. I do remember Root and you and I were in one secret conversation where... or I was in it, and maybe I told you about it, I forget exactly, but where someone was asking to be king made. Now, obviously, that's a completely different situation than saying, like, hey, I'm going to king make you. Yeah. Coming in and being like, hey, give me 2 trade goods, and the other person being like, but that's king making. And they're like, yeah, I know, but do it. Do you want to do that? Do you want to just do that? I understand that it's king making, but I don't care. So that has been conversations that have happened at other points in the tournament. But it is slimy, and I don't know how we'll do future tournaments. If we'll someday... I know that the Texas tournament that happened this past weekend, they had a specific rule that was you cannot gain your 10th victory point through support for the throne. That was just straight up and down a house rule that they added. I don't know if we'll do that or not. I don't know how much we will change how we do these tournaments because of this kind of behavior, because at the end of the day...
It rare.
Is Twilight Imperium, and it is also pretty rare. Yeah. So sometimes it happens.
Like Patience even said in the 120 games that he's played, this is the first time this has happened.
Never, right. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt really torn about it because I am very I would never do this, and I would be so furious.
Oh, I would be. Can you? I would live, Hunter. I would be hospitalized with a head injury.
So I
would go to prison for butting my head into someone else's
break
head.
Your desk with your head.
I want to talk about a little bit of a difference between a tournament game and a normal game between your friends or even in a community.
I can't decide which is more likely to see this.
I think it's this because you have no vested interest in a relationship with anyone else.
Right.
Like you, by and large, most of these people will never play with each other or see each other or talk to each other again. So why does he care if he pisses patients off? He doesn't care.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I said this to Hunter off the air though, but like Patience is a very, very active person in the community, right? Yeah. So even for Patience, even within the confines of the tournament, if Patience did this kind of thing, your honor
his cred
goes down a peg, right? His credibility goes down.
Yeah.
The player John that took this deal, John I've seen on Discord every once in a while, but John is not an active participant in the Discord. So I can see John's argument being exactly what you're saying, Root, of like, I don't care. I want to win the tournament. I want to be the person who won the tournament. Exactly. I do not care how the community feels about me. And that's a pretty valid stance to take, I would say. Yeah.
Sure, but I want to say something. I care, and I want the errata game for next week is I want how many people would 100% support us basically adopting the Texas rule for the rest of the tournament, even though
which is what it is now formally called, the Texas rule.
The Texas rule. That is what it is. Yeah, the Texas rule. If you guys are down for, man, how many little I'm just a phrase turning machine. If you guys are into us adopting the Texas rule for the rest of the tournament, because like honestly, I like with a prelims game. I don't know. I was really bummed out. I do not know how bummed out I would be if somebody did this in the semis or God forbid the finals.
Yeah,
I would
if
be
someone
so
handed over the
bummed
finals, I would have really strong opinions.
How many hours? How many hours would we have spent watching games? And then just for it to be, it's over.
It's over. I decided. I'm the captain now. Give me your tournament.
Yeah, like if this happened again, so this is the last prelims game, I can say for certain that if this happens again, I would be so upset. So I don't know. Like if everyone basically responded to this and was like, no, Texas rule, do it. Okay. Right. If everybody was like, yeah, Texas rule, do it, then I don't know.
We'll do it. I would probably do it.
Yeah.
Let's transition then into the prelims overall. We're already deep in this episode. Let's do some quick overview. This is going to be kind of a freewheeling discussion here because we've all got the spreadsheet. We've been collecting a bunch of data. If you don't know, if you haven't seen this, Evernoob has a super cheat sheet with a bunch of good information on it, and he's set up a big statistics page, and I've been inputting the data from every game into it for a bunch of different factors. We will probably take a lot of the VODs of these games and continue using them to collect more and more data because we've gotten a lot of really interesting information out of tracking some of this stuff. I hope that we can expand this
before we get into too
something
much of
bigger.
These stats. I want to say that I do not stand by the things that we reveal with these stats being statistically important.
100% agreed. This is 18 games on a tournament. Here's what this needs to be taken as. These are statistics that apply to this tournament map with this draft setup. Right?
Yep.
This is not Twilight Imperium at large, and even within our map, this is not a statistically significant amount of data. Yeah. This is way too little, but it is still fun to kind of play around.
It's fun to talk about. I just want to be clear about that up front.
You're exactly right. That is a big caveat we have to draw. No one should think that we're making any grandstanding assumptions about any of these numbers. That being said, trade is the best strategy.
The data is screaming it.
So someone actually so someone asked about this on one of the Discord channels early, or like yesterday or something, and I think I realized one of maybe several reasons that trade is good on this particular map.
Not just good, like far and above. 7 of the 18 games have been won by trade round 1.
Okay, predominantly
the next in line is 4 with Warfare. Warfare also decent, but like trade is crazy.
One of the reasons I think that you see people getting away with good trade a lot in this game is that the equidistant systems are empty. They are not contested systems. You don't send a ship there and then have it get killed by someone else who needs to go there for a planet. That doesn't happen.
Right.
And because of that, you're peacefully neighbors with people a lot more, a lot quicker, and a lot easier. And I think that opens up trade relations a lot more than on some other maps.
Absolutely. And the second factor is these slices are more or less decently even. And if you're able to claim 2 systems round 1, like the 2 adjacent to you, the only way you're really getting much of a significant economic advantage is through trade.
Yes.
You get 3 free trade goods, and whoever you're establishing relationships with, and hopefully you're getting, 3 more trade goods on top of that. So getting $6 more, which in many situations is like double the income that most people are getting, or 1.5 of the people you're trading with. So it's a huge economic boon that propels you into round 2. So you end up with a really good round 2 because of all the money you bankrolled or all the progress you made round 1.
Yeah.
On this map specifically, because of those things you just outlined, Root, like that you're not jumping down your neighbor's slices very fast. Like it's not till round 3 that we start to see like lots of clashes on this map.
Yeah, and don't forget we had the best player, Unaligned Magi, picked trade the
4 times.
Unaligned 4 times in a row, and won their game. I'm not being sarcastic. I am wearing a shirt right now with Unaligned Magi's picture, his picture that he uses in the Discord, with it on there, and it's covered in gear that just says Magi #1.
Can I talk about the second really weird fluke of this data? And this one,
Sure.
I just don't even know where to go with this in my brain. I don't know where to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Second round picks, 5 games won with construction as the second round pick.
What?
That is way more than everything else. Everything else is
you're right. That's the
3 for
highest.
leadership, 0 for diplo, 0 for political, 2 for trade, 1 for warfare, 1 for tech, 3 for imperial, 5 for construction.
That is bizarre.
Wow.
That's bizarre.
I have 2 theories on why construction is doing so well round 1. First,
Round 2, you mean? Round 2.
round 2, I do mean round 2. First is very often you're taking construction round 2 because you're a late pick, which means you were an early pick round 1 probably. So I think a lot of times it's like you had a good round 1
And round 3.
that forced, and then you're probably going to have a good round 3 because you're going to be high in the order round 3.
Yeah.
So like being low in the picking order round 2 is better than being low round 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Which is probably
That makes
more
a lot
common.
of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
We're kind of making up numbers here. We're playing some Calvin ball.
Yeah,
But I
yep.
think in general, this is the point. The second thing being round 1, you spend getting your slice. If round 2, you spend it solidifying your slice and preparing it for like, now I'm fully on board in round 3.
Yeah.
I think that's the other like significant factor here, right? Is I'm getting that forward space stock. I'm
Yep.
getting a PDS on my second system.
and not
whatever.
just
I am
getting
now-
a forward space stock, but one that you could use that round.
use it that round, and you're like very positioned round 3. I would not be surprised to see someone who took trade round 1 and then construction round 2. Their position round 3 was probably always a comment where we were like, oh wow, they just look like they have lots of stuff and they look really strong right now. Maybe you have like no points, but you are ready to like swing hard in the mid game.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thread with this sort of idea.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the slices or faction stuff?
Let's do slices.
Let's
no,
talk about
no.
no?
Let's do factions because we need to transition from map to map. So we'll end
okay.
on talking about the prelim map itself. And
Well,
bid it
I
good
thought
night.
it was interesting that Winu had a 50% win rate.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. Someone
You wanted it to be 100.
So yeah,
It could have
someone
been
took
100%.
Winu. Someone took Winu and lost like a chump, and caused our Winu win rate to go down. And I'm mad about that.
Right. The Winu lost to, and then there is the game. Which game was it? I forget. But that game will forever be known as the Winu.
Game 5.
Yep.
Game 5.
Game 5.
Game
Game
five,
5. The Winu. Where
So,
the Winu Winus?
We only had 4 factions with multiple victories. So let's talk about those 4 factions that each had multiple victories. Let's start with the least. So Barony only had 2 wins. Barony had 2 wins.
I'm proud
I would
of them.
say I'm proud of Barony. I didn't think Barony would do
Me either.
amazing. I don't know. I thought they would be in a lot of games, and they are strong.
Yeah.
But there's just that ground force problem with Barony that always comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but smart players don't make that mistake.
Smart
I
players
think
don't make
that's
that
the
mistake.
thing.
Yep.
Yep. Because it's a mistake. It's a misplay. It's not like Barony. It's not like their infantry cost more or something
Right.
goofy. It's
Right.
just like something that people commonly skip over.
As a Barony player myself, I love playing the Barony, and I think I fall into this trap sometimes, is that I just love building their dreadnoughts And because you only have dreadnoughts, you don't have you know carriers full of ground forces with you, and that can hurt as you get further away from your space docks.
Right.
Yeah. That's definitely a mistake that I've made playing the Barony before.
Yeah, because you're not L1, you know.
Yeah.
You're not L1. You're not truly cool. You're just kind of
So
cool.
let's talk about Extra then. Extra had 3 wins. One of them being, of course, this sort of weird win. A little bit different.
I think we could all agree it was sort of weird.
Yeah, it was a little bit. Yeah.
So 3 wins for Extra out of 8 games played. But I think the sizable thing here with Extra is Extra was only banned twice. Mm-hmm. They are among the factions that were least banned. Actually, they're tied with Sardak Nor. Sardak Nor almost never got banned. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I think it's a Goldilocks zone kind of not so bad that somebody's going to be like, get this out of here, but not so good that somebody's going to be like, get this out of here.
Yeah.
So
but
fell in the
despite being
Goldilocks
banned
zone.
so little, they won 3 games, and I really did not expect this for Extra. Like we were saying earlier, we kind of pointed this out earlier, but like Extra on this map, there is sort of that thing of like you typically have about enough in your slice, and if you can get decently lucky with objectives, just what is anybody going to do about you? I mean, what are your options?
I think it just leaned Extra. I think the map kind of leaned. It just had a natural inclination to be a little more Extra friendly. I feel like we talked about this, like even when we made the map, that because of it being so defensive minded.
Right.
The only thing not going great for it was that none of the systems that were bordering Mechatol Rex were really very good.
Right.
So you couldn't do the like plop a space dock down right next to Mechatol Rex and like do that like kind of classic.
Lodor was the only spot to do that in.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
And that's why I think Extra in Slice of the Gashly would have been really satisfying to see more of.
There's also
I don't think we saw that a lot.
I feel like Extra can get a lot of value out of putting 2 PDS2 on an equidistant system. Mm-hmm. And just like extort the heck out of their neighbor for
a
couple
and
trade
this
games
lacks
every time.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about the next one is the L1Z1X MindNet. They had 3 wins as well out of 10 games played. So like lots of wins, but they were also played all the time, like constantly being played.
Yeah.
So they actually don't have above a 50% win rate, or even really, I mean, they're less than a 1/3 win rate, but they were played so much and won 3 games. L1's good, and we just know they're good. And is there anything more specific we can say about why they had such a good win rate here?
I'm gonna honestly say that they're of all the factions that were picked that amount of times, they're like one of the best. Probably
Sarl
the best.
had 10, Yin had 11,
and then
Mentak had 10.
So I think the amount of times they were selected does kind of influence the data a little bit. I'm willing to at least throw it and say that maybe 1 win should be a little like because it's just a sheer huge amount of times that they were played. Go ahead, Rick.
I'm gonna throw out that I think one of their biggest strengths in a large data set of games is their flexibility with their racial tech that I don't remember what it's called somehow off the top of my head.
Inheritance
That's
systems.
the one. Inheritance systems lets you just do anything tech-wise that you need to accomplish for the game. And I don't actually know the stats on whether or not the winners had that tech or how many L1s
I haven't kept track of
that.
I'll say this much: I don't remember that many people getting it.
I remember a few. There were a few. There was at least one. Okay. There was at least one that made good use out of it. I think there was one that didn't. I think one we had this weekend, maybe yesterday, had inheritance systems and just like didn't use it at all.
Didn't do anything with it.
But I think that added flexibility can really help.
Yeah,
they have a flexibility with their tech path too, because like sometimes I think about it and I'll be annoyed about starting with a green red, but they start with 2 really good green and red, and then you really just can go blue and yellow, which is a great tech path, and you've already got 2 very like kind of you've got neural and you've got plasma, which are kind of the only 2 I would want if I was playing a more like blue minded faction.
Yep. Right.
So yeah, like if your tech game is going well, then I think they're going to do really well. And I think in the hands of a lot of really smart players, they will find they'll find a good use for their abilities and good tech to grab, and then good abilities to have, and then also that flagship is just crazy. But they also got played a lot. I want to keep throwing that out.
And on top of that, both Barony and L1 have this in common. They have great economic home systems. All those extra bonus resources set them just a little bit above the rest when everyone's slice is more or less the same.
Yeah. All right, so last up that I want to talk about, and the reason I want to talk about them last is because it's the Necrovirus with 3 wins out of 8 games played, and also looking at the numbers, out of all the ones that got played a decent amount of times, they have the highest number of victory points scored. So we've been tracking that. Now, there are some where it's like, okay, 2 games played for Winu, and their average score is 8. Well, we can't really, that's nothing. That's 2 games.
Yeah.
But out of 8 games, they have an 8.4 average score, which is the highest amongst the people with good amount of games played. And I think we all felt this in Necro more than anybody else too.
Yes.
Like we felt Necro doing better than any other faction. I mean, obviously, the Unaligned Magi game was a huge eye opener as to kind of why.
Magi.
But let's give me the overview of like why does Necro kind of.
Honestly, I kind of want to reuse some of the points that Root just made about L1, except like even further, basically.
Yeah, talk about flexibility.
It's the most flexible faction, and I think when you have, ideally, if I just watched like really, really good Twilight Imperium players play for a year straight, and that's all I did, to be able to design like a pro level tier list, I feel like Necro would probably have a lot of variance from like our more Space Cats, Peace Turtles, me and you, just plebs talking about this.
Right.
I feel like Necro swings up a lot because if you're playing the game really smart, you're not really limited by any of the things that I would say are kind of a downside of Necro. Like as a casual player, I might be like, oh, I have to fight for tech. That sounds rough. But if I'm really smart about it all the time, then I'm gonna turn that into a strength. And also, Necro doesn't have to worry about buying tech. So I feel like
free money.
Yeah, you're very freed by not having to use your resources in that way, and especially in a map that's so even. We're talking about basically every Necro slice was like, let's just make up a random number. Let's just say it was 4 resources better than all of the other times anybody else played there. Let's say that. Let's just say every round
it was 4.
Yeah, it's not. That's not what it works out to be, obviously, because they do have to fight for the tech. But if they're smart about it, it's sort of like that, which is a huge lead on everybody else.
And they're getting more ships out on the board because they need to get their tech and everything. But
I will say about all of the Necro players that I saw, at least, people were very diplomatic. There were not. Like in a lot of other Necro games, you just see people just go out and fight. I need to fight for tech. I just go out and fight. But there were a lot of Necro players who played the meta very well and negotiated for, to snipe a ship here and there or traded for a ship, stuff like that. And that's huge on the impact that your fighting has on the table, and that's really important.
Yeah, I was totally caught off guard by how much Necro deal making there was.
Yes,
even like. There were times where we would get excited because Necro would like take trade and then convince somebody to like bring their ship over to them to be like, oh, Necro's going to get trade and then also going to gobble up that ship for a tech. And then they wouldn't even really do it like that. They would basically be like, all right, well, this is here. Could we do like a deal where I kill this but give you like a trade good or something like that? I don't remember how they would work out the deals, but it would be a lot of stuff like that where people were negotiating to have combats that would get them more tech. And also, I want to call it that people were really smart about what faction tech they selected from other factions. Very regularly, I was seeing Necro players just pick the right faction tech to take and get it. Even if that player was across the board from them, they would make a point to go get it, and then they would have that. I don't know. There was we saw Necro with like L1 Super Dreadnought like several times to where it was just like, okay, this is fantastic.
And I think they took advantage of having Mentak around multiple times as well.
Yeah, yes, we definitely saw mirror computing on a Necro plenty. It almost like watching watching this tournament made me feel like, oh, is Necro just like an S tier faction or something? And I just didn't know that. Like,
I think it's a faction that just has a very high skill ceiling. And the more you play, and the better of an overall player you are, the better you can perform as the Necrovirus.
Right. Yeah. When Hunter and I are doing a tier list that is for everybody, I can't put them in an S tier.
I agree.
But in this level of play, I am totally happy with putting them in an S tier.
Definitely.
I need more data. I need more data.
Sure, Hunter needs more data. But the thing for me, really, I think it all barrels down to command counters are really important at very high level play, like just having the options to do things, and the fact that you have 2 strategy cards that you can get command counters from.
Yep.
Like the command counter advantage in Necrovirus is enough for me to.
That is also huge.
And like the fact that if you are low on influence one round, you can spend resources instead on command counters, and then the next round, I don't want to spend my influence on. When those objectives come out, when it's 8 influence, and everyone else is like, oh crap, am I getting command counters or am I getting the point this round? Necro gets to be like, don't care. I will get my command counters from tech this round, and I will get the point, and they get to just keep doing what they do.
Yeah.
So they just nothing slows them down.
Right. And there's also all the weird ways that that stuff like that will happen. Like seeing like Necro play like focused research to turn like 4 trade goods into some command counters that they needed. Like, or like an agenda, Ixion artifact goes off and gives Necro 6 command counters. Like, it's like, what is even happening?
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to do a fun little breakdown now. Then we're talking about wins, but let's talk about the draft a little bit.
Can we, before we finish
Hunter,
talking about races?
Yes,
actually,
go ahead.
I
Go
want
ahead,
to talk
Alec.
about the upsets, but yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk about Medtac.
Yes, that's what I want to talk about.
All right. Speaking of upsets, Medtac are in general just a very middle of the road faction. They have some great advantages and they have some disadvantages. They were picked 10 times in this tournament and they won 0 games.
0 games.
They likely would have won one today, to be fair. They likely would have. I think they would have won one today.
Well, there's a couple. That's the thing, though, is right. Mentak. There's a couple games where Mentak was right there.
Okay, this game they were robbed of.
Pink
though,
is a notable one. There were at least 3 games where Mentak was like right there on the edge of winning, and then lost it for one reason or another.
Sure, but we just got done talking about how Necro is like a faction that maybe at a high level of play is
right.
like, gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, and this is
Mentak
a maybe.
not.
Maybe Mentak is not quite that. Like
it's just too easy to shut them out.
Yeah.
Well, this is what you always hear. The really active players on the Discord. So many of them dislike Mentak for exactly these reasons, because they're the people that don't put up with Mentak BS.
Yep.
Right? At high level play, no one like the only money Mentak gets is the stuff that they pillage.
Yep.
And then everybody makes smarter trades around Mentak's pillaging.
Yeah, I am primarily a Mentak player. They are my faction. I love them to death. And when I play Mentak, you don't pillage every time. You just can't. Like you cannot do it.
You have to be judicious.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose your battles there. You have to make deals with people not to pillage, like Patience tried to do today and did fairly successfully in many instances. Mm-hmm. And you want to. Another thing that Patience did today, which I was very happy with, he took trade at least once, maybe twice, and make deals and include, like, I won't pillage from you this round, and you'll have extra commodities, and you'll make a trade with someone else who has extra commodities, and I won't pillage from those. And that's that's really important to. It's another one of the things with the Necros. You have to cool the meta down, because the meta is going to be against you just automatically, and you have to take a step back and you be careful and don't pillage every time that you can.
That's all well and good. There was a much bigger upset in this tournament than Mentak's 10 games played and 0 wins, and that's the Nalu Collective with 7 games played and 0 losses. What is going on?
0 wins. Zero
wins. Did I say losses? Whatever. 0 losses.
They won
and 7
all
games
7.
Played.
Isn't this awful?
What's going on with Nalu at high level play? Like, what happened? I can't wrap my head around this.
Well,
one.
it's only 7, which is a little bit lower for a faction that I would say kind of just barely falls into the Goldilocks zone of being like not going to be banned all the time.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, they're the funniest one, where it's almost every game that they didn't get banned in, they did make it into the game. Like, they very rarely got left out. In fact, if I pull it up, the number of times they just weren't picked was 1 time.
Yeah, I saw that game.
The one time they made it through a nomination process but didn't get drafted or picked was once, which is really pretty wild.
I think on the surface they seem like a really good pick, and they have the advantage of zero initiative, which I would have assumed in a competitive game where every game should be close. Zero initiative is hugely important.
Right.
And it was a lot of times. I mean, there were plenty of games that were decided by initiative, but something was always setting the Nalu back to where they weren't the ones in contention.
I don't even know what to say about it.
I really don't. I can't. I have no analysis here that works for me.
I feel like
I'm trying to even look at like the pie slices that they were always in, and I don't know if that's giving me any information. I can't figure out what happened to Nalu.
I think it was just two. Every game I think was just different circumstances that came together against them. I don't think in my memory that there's any one thing I can pick out that went wrong. I think
that was the primary issue.
I mean, even looking at it, it's not like they even, because I'm going to talk about another faction here in a second, but like Nalu was tried in a lot of different slices.
Yeah,
they did not. It's not like some factions where they kind of always ended up in the same slice. They were in a lot of different slices, so they had multiple times to try different, somewhat different like strategies, and it's just it never
today's
turned around.
Our Nalu in a game 18, like. There were things that they did wrong and things that went wrong for them that have really nothing to do with their faction.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I want to hear the community's feedback on this one of like, and especially from the players who played as Nalu. If you played as Nalu in this tournament, let me know what you feel like went wrong for you. I want to hear back from you on this.
Totally.
The other really big upset I want to talk about, though, is the Isarl tribes with 10 games played and only one win. But how many games played in Dangerous Diplo?
7 or 8?
A lot.
7 or 8.
Many of them.
I'm going to start counting it up, but let's talk about what the heck. I mean, so first off, why is Isarl always taking Dangerous Diplo? What's the logic there?
Well, so there's a very simple reason for this,
right?
actually. There's a very simple reason for this, a very easy explanation. That is, in many of those games, Isarl got picked first as the person at the top of the order, and then the snake draft came back to them at the end, and they were left with Dangerous Diplo. It was not a choice at all.
Very often, and very often, too, even if it wasn't just the last choice, it was that or something like Darian's Slice.
Yeah,
and I agree with the logic of Dangerous Diplo has the blue skip.
Yep.
And that's it. I want Gravity Drive as a Sarl, so I will go ahead and I will grab the blue skip.
Right.
So all of that makes total sense. And so it's interesting to see how this is the one case in this tournament where I can feel like definitively the draft had an impact in the ability of this faction.
Yep.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
of that.
I agree.
Like the only reason Isarl did so poorly is because they are good, but ended up in pretty bad slice.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that might be the same story with Nalu, actually. Now that I
Maybe,
think about
but
it.
Nalu, but like I said, Nalu didn't end up in the same slice over and over.
Yeah,
and over
that's true.
again.
Nalu was all over the place. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Just to spoiler a little bit, Dangerous Diplo has the worst average score of any of the slices, by not a huge margin, but definitely a noticeable margin.
Yeah. Before we dive too much into the slices, I wanted to do one thing. I'm sorry. One quick thing is just, Hunter, before we started all this, we did our TI election night, and we said what we thought our top bans and picks would be. And we have to go back to these numbers, and we gotta check them out.
What were they?
Here's our top 7 picks. Here's what we thought would be not the most wins, but just most likely to be in games. So let's compare these to the actual numbers. Necro, L1Z1X, Isarl, Ghosts, Yin, Barony, and Xcha. So the actual top 7 was Barony, that's 1. L1Z1X, that's 2. Mentak, big surprise there.
Yeah.
Nalu, no, Nalu's not in the top 7. Oh, my numbers are off. Hang on. I'm still looking at him.
How dare you.
No, I've got it, though. Isarl. So that one is a bit of a surprise in terms of they are higher than they were on our list. Isarl was our third from the bottom of this, but Isarl's on the list. Yin is on the list. Xcha is on the list. Necro, what'd I say? L1, Mentak. So Mentak's the only outlier here, it looks like.
That we did
you can
not
swap
predict.
Mentak out for Ghosts, and then with that, our list is correct. So Ghosts played a lot less than we thought they would, and
Significantly.
Mentak played quite a bit more than we thought that they would.
Yeah, Ghost played a lot less and had pretty poor showings. They only had an average victory point score of 6.8 over all the games they were played in. They were only played in 4 games, so I don't know how important that average
Yeah.
VP score is. But yeah, did not do so hot, really.
Yeah, and what's funny to me about this is because I think of people liking Ghosts, but that's like a casual player thing, right? Ghosts are fun, but at the end of the day, I think this is what shows that people don't feel confident with the Ghosts. When you play Ghosts, you know you're going to have a wild ride, generally speaking.
I have a generic theory that I kind of just thought up on the spot to throw out about the Ghosts on this map, and that is that one of their, maybe even their one biggest strength is their ability to kind of later on in the game get to places to get control objectives that are unexpected or otherwise difficult to reach. And one of the things about this map is that everyone's slice tended to be very compact and therefore very well defended, so it was kind of difficult to crack that open.
to get in. Yeah. And
agree.
the wormholes were very spread out, and I can't tell if that scared people off or not. Just like not having easy access to jump into those wormholes and do all kinds of stuff. But the fact that they're getting you all over the map, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. But my real argument here is, why didn't that logic apply to Mentak? Because I personally think the same way about Mentak. I think Mentak is going to be a wild, bumpy ride, and Ghost is going to be a wild, bumpy ride. But Mentak, far and away, picked more than Ghost.
I don't know. I don't know why they were picked so much. I really don't. I don't have an answer for that at all. I feel like they're a lot of fun and can be really good, but like I'm super biased, and I also objectively know that they're not actually that strong for several reasons.
Right.
So I don't know why they were picked 10 times. I don't really get it, to be honest.
Well, let's talk about some pie slices then.
Yeah, let's talk about
So
slices.
Hunter, you were talking about Dangerous Diplo, right? It's got the worst score with only 1 win, and Darien Slice also only has 1 win. So these two were the worst slices, and we saw this. They were often the last picks.
Yep.
People just agreed they weren't good. Darien Slice almost didn't get a single win until one of these last couple games here. So Darien Slice very likely was looking like the worst slice. But Darien Slice makes sense to me, because Darien Slice, the issue with it is it's hard to spend your influence.
Super inefficient.
In Darien Slice. It's really annoying and inefficient to get your command counters in Darien Slice. Every other slice has some sort of a 1-3 or a 0-3 or the Aaron Amir combo, which is just easy to use. So Darien Slice is the only one that really suffers. You could say Dangerous Diplo also suffers, which is the other reason it's on the bottom. It's kind of a tricky leadership slice, but it's got at least a couple more options with Dalbutha Exxon. Darien Slice just doesn't have that.
I want to make a quick connection with Darien Slice. We had the Yin Brotherhood were played 11 times, and I don't know how many were in Darien Slice, but it was a lot of them were in Darien Slice. So there were a lot of people that picked Yin, put them in the slice that was named after them, and then lost, and Yin just didn't seem to. It seemed like Darien Slice was not the best slice, probably the worst slice, and then Yin kind of struggled in general, no matter where they were. I think the only Yin victory was somebody that did not. They played them, I think, in Slice of the Gashly.
It was Slice of the Gashly, if I remember right. I think that even more points out the problems of Darien Slice too, which is like the reason it's called Darien Slice is because of all those 2 influence planets. And if you are Yin, that means you're using those 2 influence planets, which means you have even less influence to get for command counters.
Yeah.
So in a normal game where like the map gets built in a different way, that's the thing about Yin, is Yin wants a very high influence slice. You need lots and lots of influence, because you need to be able to do both things. You need command counters and you need indoctrination. And Darien Slice does not offer a path for that. So Dangerous Diplo, though, what the heck happened there? Barragler to 4 is just a bad system, or what?
What is the explanation there for Dangerous Diplo?
Barragler to 4 is a challenging system to quantify it. Like on paper, it's amazing. It has the most numbers on it. Like that's
numbers
that
are
sounds
good.
great. But it's
not
also
being used efficiently.
Yeah, it's super inefficient. Like you almost never use that influence for anything but votes, and when
Right.
you have to use that 2-3 system for a token, it feels bad. It hurts so hard.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and it actually Dangerous Diplo is there's in Evernoob's cheat sheet there's actually a tournament map analysis, and if you're trying to use it efficiently, it is the lowest value slice, right? Most everything is at 11, Dangerous Diplo is at 10 total value, and Slice of the Gashly is at 12. So Dangerous Diplo showing up as weaker and proving to be weaker. Also of note that it's only got the one tech skip. There's a couple slices with 2. It's hard to get to other people's tech skips from Dangerous Diplo. And I feel like I always saw people struggling to get planet trait objectives here. Even though you have 2 hazardous and 2 cultural, finishing that out, you had really difficult access.
Yeah.
Because other slices, you don't quite have it, but you don't have to go that far to get it.
Yeah.
But Dangerous Diplo always had to go like across the map to go get the rest of their
That's true.
traits.
Yeah.
Well, and I believe all of their opportunities to accomplish that, like all the easiest ones, the ones that would make the most sense, would most of the time involve striking at the hex right in front of somebody's home system, which is generally speaking the most defended hex. Like the easy example is you've got Dangerous Diplo, you've got Berrigan Lord of 4 for 2 hazardous, and then what are you going to do? Go to like Mirror and then Saculag and Slice of the Gashly? Like that's a lot.
Right.
And Aranam Mirror is likely going to be defended pretty heavily.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work out
And
that well.
on the right
planet-type
side,
wise.
your other option for another hazardous is Melon Zobat, but the big problem there is you have that nebula constantly in the way. So you only have
Right.
one path into Melon Zobat, and that was constantly giving people problems. Let's talk about the other weird thing. We're talking about Slice of the Gashly having the most value. Going into this tournament, I think everybody expected Slice of the Gashly to be the best slice, and yet it is the middle. It only won 3 times. It's got a 7.5 score rate, which is basically it's second highest, but way behind in those numbers. It's kind of middle of the pack, like tied with the other middle 3. So what happened to Slice of the Gashly? I have one opinion, which is probably just that it very often got picked first, which means you very often had weaker factions there.
Sure.
Yeah. I also think that I don't know how much the data backs this up, but I think that if we look at how many of the the races with strong economic home systems got picked, very few of them ended up in that slice very often. So
I agree.
So you don't have a
Yeah.
lot of resources there, and that can start to really hurt as the game goes on.
Right. Yeah, I this is anecdotal purely, but I remember multiple times seeing someone in the Slice of the Gashly and having the thought, man, they just don't have a lot of stuff, do they?
Yeah.
They look really weak.
Yep.
And that felt really persistent throughout the whole tournament.
Yeah, spread really thin in general. They won 3 games. I'm wondering what factions won in Slice of the Gashly. I know it was
Right.
Yin at one point, which actually
Right.
kind of fits, I feel like, with what you're saying, like, because Yin is kind of a like hold on kind of faction,
Right.
like things didn't go well, but I've still got all of my planets kind of deal.
Yeah. Janor won as Jolnar.
Okay.
Janor
So-
won as Jolnar.
So we can
in
kind of
Slice the
throw that
Gashly.
out as being because it's Jolnar, right?
Yeah. Right. 9 of Spades won as Yin, so that's the one we're talking about there. The L1Z1X Mantis game was there.
Okay.
So every time
And that's-
here's what's happening. Every time a good faction gets in Slice of the Gashly, guess what happens? They win.
That's that
They win,
economic
yeah.
powerhouse home system. You need to do well there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
looking-
here's some random ones I'm picking out.
Yeah, that was
Muat was in it. Krias, Nor. A lot of bad factions got there.
Exactly.
And it's probably because of what you're saying. Yeah, they
chose the faction right away, and then got left with whatever was left. So let's jump into our tied for second with 4 wins each, and also the exact same average score of 7.3. Little and Tight and Fast and Cultured are apparently the exact
Yeah.
same slice.
Yeah.
Just the same difference. Doesn't
no,
matter.
they're great. They're great. They were good slices.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even much to say with them. They're just solid. I think they were the highest variance of like when they were getting picked and what factions were ending up in them. And they both did what they set out to do. Little and Tight was like one of the first ones we named, and it was named for being just like, you've got 5 resources in Abyss Freya, you've got your influence in Case and Raron, like everything is set up to just be spent efficiently.
Yeah.
And it turns out efficiency is very good in this board game.
Yeah, speaking of efficiency, the slice that did the best has some of the most efficient planets in any of the slices.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, it's you got your green skip in Little and Tight, and that's a good skip to have for a lot of factions. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, especially
Little and Tight. Here's what I'll say about
Tight.
Little and Tight has the most interesting relationship because Little and Tight has completely open access to Slice of the Gashly.
Right.
Every other faction, every other
that's
slices
true.
have anomalies in between them, and Little and Tight has this efficient little slice, and then also, how many times did we see a player in Little and Tight jump over to Lazar
It was actually
to
a
go
lot.
take stuff?
That did happen
Yeah,
very
a
frequently.
lot
Very
of the times,
frequently.
and that was
frequently.
always where they needed to get their 4th hazardous or like another tech specialty or whatever. Like people were always getting into that slice, and you had good access from Little and Tight. Fast and Cultured is just I think the blue skip is a big deal there.
Yes. Not just,
and
I want to say this, not just the blue skip, but the fact that it's next to your home system and you can take it
right
one.
there next to you.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I agree
It's a
with
big
that.
deal to get that fast.
Yep.
So let's talk about Big and Tight. Big and Tight had 5 wins, so it's only 1 more than Little and Tight and Fast and Cultured, but points-wise, way above everybody else. It's got 8.1 average score across all games.
Yeah.
So not only are people winning more often in Big and Tight, but everyone is performing better in Big and Tight.
Yeah. I want to point out, though, real quick, before we get deep into Big and Tight, that even though Slice of the Gashly had a lower win rate, its average score was a little bit higher than Little and Tight and Fast and Cultured. Which I don't even know how
Slice
to
of the Gashly
explain
still
that.
did well. Yeah, exactly. It still did well, but it did not win.
It just didn't.
It never finished.
Yeah, it didn't clinch it. And then Big and Tight, just I think being just the overall best. It comes down to what you guys were saying before, but a lot of it is just like efficiency. The way that the resources and the influence, mostly the way that you're never really having to spend. If you're spending planets for influence, you're never really having to spend too much of anything. And Torcan just being there, being that 0-3 is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think Big and Tight has the most options. Not the most, but always had great options for trade. People were always parking in those asteroid fields and gravity rifts, getting trades established. You also always had the gravity rift as an option when you needed it, so you were able to make the big final plays to finish the game out. And I think green skip next to the home system helps lots and lots of factions.
Yep.
One of my favorite games was seeing Mentak pick Diplomacy round 1 and take New Albion and get Cruiser 2 right away. I loved it. It was great.
Love it. Favorite play of the game.
Yep.
All right. Does this wrap up our prelim? Is there any final notes?
There are some things I want to talk about still about like overall
Yes. Yeah, let's do
behavior
it.
of players.
Yep. Let's do it.
I want to talk
Let's cover
first
the
of all
meta of the prelims.
When we were going into this tournament, one of the things that I wanted to see the most was aggressive play and breaking deals and lying, and I wanted to see that because of something we mentioned earlier, which is, why do you care if you piss someone off in a tournament game where you will never see this person again?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And it's cutthroat. It's a tournament. Like, it should be more competitive than your average game with your friends on TTS or in person. And I feel like by and large we didn't see that, and I was really disappointed. There were like a couple games where there was some really cool aggression and there was some cool backstabbing deals that happened, and I liked it a lot when that happened. But like, people just weren't aggressive, and people are going to blame the map for this, and I think that would be wrong. I don't think it's the map's fault almost at all, if any.
Yeah, we had a lot of games where there was where it just felt like the general attitude of all the players was like very pro, lots of negotiation.
Yeah.
I mean, like, trade was the strongest strategy card data wise, and I don't think that's just because trade is fantastic or really necessarily having to do with any of the points we made before. I also just think it had to do with the attitude of the players and the way their meta worked. Yeah.
Well,
the meta
and I think the map
was trade,
leans into that.
not fight.
Yeah.
That's part of the meta of the map is like, if you want to really get stuff from someone, you have to fully commit to digging into their pie slice, which then turns everyone into like, well, if you're going to get into my pie slice, I need something big in reciprocation for that. So I need to get either into your slice,
I agree,
or you need to pay
but
me a lot.
There are so many times in this tournament that I have read people talking on the Discord about their game after they played, where they said something along the lines of, "Oh man, I really should have invaded so and so's home system."
Yeah, they always wish they'd been more aggressive.
I really should have been really aggressive in that point. And I would say at almost every moment, except for, and here's the notable example of not doing this: Magi, number one, woohoo, go Magi. Magi didn't play like that. Magi invaded home system or blockaded home system space docks when it was necessary. And a lot of other players would get to that point where they could see the opening, where they were like, "Oh, I can go for the throat right now."
And they would say it
and
out
they'd
loud,
make a
too.
deal. They'd make a deal
Right.
instead. They'd
Well,
be like,
and they would-
"Well, how about you give me something?"
I would hear
and I
someone
won't.
else multiple times. I remember hearing someone be like, "No, you should do that," and the other person was like, "I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that cutthroat." And it's like, what are you talking about? You don't want to be that cutthroat.
There was a
I want it
game-
to be more cutthroat going forward.
I don't remember which game number it was, but if you guys remember the player Fabian, our
Yep.
Swedish
Oh, I'll never
player,
forget Fabian.
He did some stuff that just tickled my fancy so hard. He forced his way into his neighbor's slice, forced a support for the throne trade, and then forced the other player to give up his support for the throne to take his slice back. And it was amazing. Like it was
great.
so good. And that game
And
that
Fabian
combat
was the
between
one
them-
who was not only breaking deals, but completely unapologetically breaking deals. Making the other players apologize for him breaking their deals. Like, I'm sorry, I assumed you wouldn't break that deal. I don't know what I was thinking. That was foolish of me. Yes, I know, quite. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later. Good going. Have fun in the game. I'm going to crush you now.
It was great. It was really nice to see. And one of the things that happened in this last game today, Patience refreshed at one point with trade everybody on the table, and after spending several minutes negotiating trades with everyone, and then half the table just said no afterwards. They're like, "No, we're not going to trade with you now." And I want to see more of that. Like, go back on your word sometimes, especially when it's a Mentak player across the board and they can't retaliate.
I think going into the semis, things are gonna get heated.
Yeah, things are going to be
wild.
different.
Yeah.
We've got a map that we need to reveal that is going to be in favor of that, but also just to say it, like, all these players we're talking about are ones that said, I wish I'd been a little bit more aggressive I think they're going to go into the semis thinking about that and knowing that they are up against good players. You know what I mean? I'm not there were obviously players. This was an open invitation tournament. There were players in this tournament that were weaker performers. And the better players capitalized on that.
Yeah.
Going to the semis, we have a very evenly matched field, which means there's a lot of expectations on them to find a new way to prove themselves. They have to find new ways to get ahead, because just getting a good deal off of someone who probably shouldn't be giving you that good of a deal, but they maybe don't know any better. That's not going to happen in the semis.
And there's one other thing I want to bring up that I saw almost none of, and it costs people games frequently, and that is that people, as long as these games took, people were not taking the time to figure out what other people could score.
God.
Yeah.
Like, they do not take the time to look at someone's slice and their tech and their planets and what they have and what secrets have been scored to try to figure out what secrets someone could have or what public objectives they could score. Like, people just weren't doing it so much, and it's crazy. You have to take the time to do that. You have to.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the players that did do this, I think, deserve, like, special mention, because it's like anybody who... There were a few games I know of that people... There was, like, one player at the table just being like, hey, why isn't anyone paying attention to so-and-so? We need to worry about so-and-so. Oh, and also look at that, like, counting everybody's stuff. And they're doing all the legwork for everybody else at the table.
And people are going to call us out for being like, well, you guys are observers, you guys see everything and know everything.
But that's what it takes.
Like, and there are several things that we talk about and see that has nothing to do with the perfect information that we might have. There's plenty of things. There's so much information that you can deduce if you just take the time to look at it and figure it out. And part of that is being familiar with, like, the secret objective deck.
Components.
Like, you just I expect everyone in the semifinals game to have that deck memorized. If you don't, you don't belong.
Oh, for sure.
You
No,
have
I
to
think
know
they
it.
all do too. Yeah, you've got to know it, and you got to be looking out for it. And not even that though. Plenty of times we saw players not even counting out what public
Exactly,
objectives
and that's
someone was going to be able to
infuriating.
score, and that's like
just crazy.
Yeah, we won't see that in the semis at all.
Right. Also,
But-
I just want to say that I've seen it. I've seen players play that way where they are actually looking at each other's
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
I know it,
It
can
didn't
be
not
done.
happen.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not impossible.
It's not magic.
When we watched the Gen Con tournament, almost
They were
every
very
game had
smart
a
about it.
lot of doing like there.
Yeah.
Two of the games that I not moderated. I didn't moderate those.
No,
Blark,
but
Blark
observed.
Knob Daddy did.
Knob Daddy
but the
did
two
it.
that I observed, they would successfully deduce the leader's secret objective all the time. Like they
Right.
always figured it
Yeah.
out.
And it's not that hard. It's really not.
No, it's really not. You just watch their behavior. They're going to do or be set up to do only a couple things.
Exactly. And you
then
just run through what
if
they
they're
can do.
not talking a lot, then you just run through what they could do, and you try and stop them from doing as much as you can.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Are we ready to reveal
I'm ready. I'm
the
so ready.
semi-final Space
freaking
Cats
out.
Peace Turtles
I'm freaking out.
Pat Ron tournament
Yes, yes,
map? I'm
yes.
looking at it on TTS right now. I'm
Okay.
zooming in and out.
Okay, let's cover how this, because if it's been a while since we did this, we've only done it once before, but we're about to talk about a bunch of visual information. So from here on out, things are gonna get really, really weird.
Yeah, good luck listening to this, sweetheart.
Good luck listening to this, and especially because last time it was even easier to cover this because the pie slices were so easily defined, and this time around, it ain't the same thing. So
Right. So
I wanna
what's
talk,
the general idea? Let's talk about the big
I want to talk about the
idea.
general idea of this map. The biggest idea is there are essentially no planets in Ring 3, which is the ring that the home systems are in. So nobody, except for one player, and we'll get into why, but nobody has systems to their left or to their right on this map. Every single planet is in the center of the map. There is nothing but planets in the center of the map. There are no empty spaces and there are no anomalies for the entire 2 rings surrounding Mechatol Rex. So that's the big thing.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Put that in your pipe and smoke. If you're wanting to look at the map while you listen along to this, there will be a Reddit post with it. It'll be on the Discord. We'll try to get it out there. The prelim map eventually got everywhere, but it did take a few days. But we will make sure this is online and viewable while you're listening to this episode. But we're still going to try to convey it to you audibly as best as we can. So that's the general idea, and that's the one thing, if we're going to talk about anything that maybe ends up changing about this map, which with the prelims map, we did end up changing 2 little system switches, right? We moved a couple planets around, and we only did it because the changes that were suggested fell in
good.
line with the theme of the map and only improved the map by the numbers.
Yes.
But we're not accepting any changes that fundamentally change the structure of the map. We have accepted this as what semis will look like, and the only thing that could be changed is like, oh, we totally just bungoed how we decided to put this this value in there or whatever. So let's start going around, and let's start with bottom left. Bottom left is a slice that we are calling the Revenge of the Gashly. Revenge of the Gashly is thusly named because this is the closest holdover from the prelims map, Slice of the Gashly. It's the closest thing you'll see to anything that looks like a slice in the prelims map. Anything that's adjacent to your home system, you should always assume is Torwitz Mechatol Rex, because otherwise you have nothing. So adjacent to your home system is Lazar Saculag. That's a 1-0 and a 2-1 with a yellow tech skip. And then your 2 adjacents on your left and right are 2 empty systems. So nothing like especially defensive, but nothing wild. You just have this blank space that you're sitting between. On the way to Mechatol Rex, you also have Saudor, which is a 2-2. But let's talk about the equidistance. The other big theme of this map is the equidistance are the best 6 systems in the game, per our numbers. When you get into like what the 5th and 6th best system is, it gets a little muddy. There are pretty much 4 obvious bests, and then you can debate what the next best ones are.
Right.
But Revenge of the Gashly in their left equidistant, and again, for those who aren't familiar, an equidistant system is the one that is the equal distance that you and your neighbor both have to it, so you are both 2 spaces away from it, which means neither of you have like squatter's rights over it. Whereas with the pie slice is defined by everything that you are closer to than any other player. So the left equidistant is RNAM Mir. a 1-2, and a 0-4 with a red skip. So once again, we see Aranam Mir and Lazar Sakulag. They're brothers. They're back together again. The gang is here and ready to build you some War Suns. Please do so. How many prelims games did we see non-Muat players get War Suns? I
Game
think
18,
the Ghosts
baby.
player in Game 18 was the only time it ever
Yeah,
happened.
so too.
Yep, one time.
I think-
There may have been one time where someone
Yes,
researched
someone
it, but I don't
researched
think
it, but
anybody
never
else
built one.
got them. Yeah. Okay, so then your right equidistant is Berrig and Lurda 4, a 3-1 and a 2-3. So guys, let's walk through this slice. First things first, why did they have the two best systems as their equidistants?
Well,
That's a good question.
I think that we all somewhat regard this slice as maybe the worst.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this
It's
much
to
about this
compensate.
map. This map is not as balanced as the prelims map by design. We are dealing with
Yeah,
a
if
draft.
someone-
We're leaning more into the
if
draft
someone
in this phase.
if someone sends Matt a recommendation for how to change the map and it's about balance, don't bother. Don't. We're not trying to balance
because
this
there's a little bit of a sense of like, no, the balance is in the weak slices get good factions. This is
Yes.
where we're starting to move into. First round was trying to be safe for everyone, but we are now moving away from safe territory. So Lazar Sakulag is an only okay system, and Saudor is kind of an annoying planet to have. And the other thing about Lazar Sakulag is it's just 3 resources and basically no influence. So all of your influence is made up for in the fact that you have Aranam Mir nearby. And
Right.
Berrig Lurda 4 is just to make up for the fact that Revenge of the Gashly is just kind of a risky slice to be in, but you get benefited if you get a jump on one of those equidistants.
It's also, I think, to give you a route to 4 planet types. So Revenge of the Gashly is going to be the slice where if you need to get 4 of the same type, it better be hazardous. Possibly industrial. Industrial is a possibility for sure. But it's one of those two with probably hazardous being the easier one to claim, depending on how you think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing, too, is that while they're getting access to the 2 best, they're both the equidistants are the 2 best, because they're such juicy systems, they are definitely going to have to fight for them,
Yep.
and they are likely not going to have both of them. I think if you have both
No.
of them, good for you, and that's awesome going forward.
gonna do well,
But that's
yeah.
probably not going to happen.
No. Doubt it. Well, and that should be said about every slice, honestly. To get both of your equidistants is just always going to be hard in this map.
Right.
I think we're going to see a lot of games where everybody either goes right or everybody goes left.
yeah, that's definitely
and
gonna
just
happen.
like that's what then defines your pie slice is the 2 in front of you and then the equidistant to your left, and everybody goes that way.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say that's noteworthy to me about Revenge of the Gashly, it is the second worst for access to wormholes. You are 2 spaces away from the empty beta and very far away from any alpha wormholes,
Yeah.
and that feels important to me.
Efficiency is probably good to bring up as well, because even though you've got access to Berrig Lurda 4, if you don't also have Aranam Mir, you're basically you're not doing too hot for influence. Basically,
Yeah, you're going to have a command counter problem.
I'm going to say from the onset, it kind of feels like you probably need Aranam Mir more than you need Berrig Lurda 4, unless you're playing a faction that doesn't have that issue.
Influence
Like if you're
problems,
Necro
yeah.
or something,
Right.
and you have other ways to get command counters, it's probably going to be a fight for Aranam Mir versus
Yep.
Berrig Lurda 4.
Absolutely. So let's talk about our next slice going in clockwise order. So top left, we're calling this bento box. Does anyone want to describe why this is called bento box?
Well, you wanted to call it. What did you want to call it?
I want to call
in?
it boxed in. Yeah, that was my tentative name. I
But
don't
that's
think it's a
not
good
creative enough, so we went with bento box.
name. So we decided to be
Oh,
funny.
I'm going to take
the
credit
reason
for that.
you're in.
I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, no, that was you.
That's Alex's. The reason you're in the bento box here is your right or not your right equidistant, but your right adjacent system is the Nebula, and your neighbor's right adjacent anomaly is the War Sun. Jeez, my words. The Supernova. So you are in between 2 more or less impassable anomalies. So you're in the box. You're on the hot box, and your left adjacent system is the empty alpha wormhole. So if anybody wants to, they can jump in the box with you.
Yes.
But beyond that, you're kind of safe in the box, right? Like nobody's gonna you can't get out of your box very easily, but nobody's coming into your box very easily. Your adjacent planets are Arnor Lore, which is a 2-1 and a 1-2, and then on your path to Mechatol Rex is Tarman, a 1-1 with a green skip. Obviously on your right is Aranam Mir, and on your left equidistant is Melon Zobat, the 0-2 and a 3-1. So Bento Box is the weird one where this is the lowest value of all of the pie slices. Like the lowest raw numbers. You've got optimally, you can get 2 resources, 3 influence out of your actual planets you have a claim to. You've got you don't have a lot, but you are way more protected than anybody else, probably on the entire map.
Yes,
another
for sure.
another interesting and important thing to note about this slice is you have in your own slice you have 3 industrial planets, and
very good claim to
and
3.
Aranam Mir with the 4th industrial is just to your right.
Yeah, or Wellen and Saudor are both adjacent to your Mechatol Rex territory, so like very easy to get 4 industrials.
Which is honestly another reason that I made the case that in the Revenge of the Gaslight slice, you're probably going to be shooting for hazardous because your neighbor is probably shooting most likely
get
for
those
industrials.
industrials.
So there's going to be a really weird relationship there, and probably some awkward planet trading that will probably happen.
I think so. So basically the big Achilles heel to Bento Box is that alpha wormhole of basically the people on the other side of the board where the low door system is. Someone could eventually jump through that if they wanted to get into your home system. But that's kind of their only way to your home system besides coming through your front door. So it is and it isn't. If you just park a destroyer there, like they've got to come slowly or get light wave. So I don't know. I like Bento Box personally. For those X-Chaws, those defensive players, but you got to find a way to like get your points, right? I mean, obviously you need to at some point get out of your box, but your box itself should be fairly defended.
And a green skip's not horrible for X-Cha. So, I mean, I think we probably will see at least one player pick X-Cha, and then Arnor Lore is just going to be a fortress, basically.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so next, the 12 o'clock position is Dreadful Influence. Our top position is defined by a supernova on the right, an empty system on the left. In front of your home system is Cornique Resculon, a 1-2 and a 2-0, and Wellen, a 1-2 with a yellow skip on the path to Mechatol. You've got Melon Zobat on your right equidistant, and your left equidistant is Centauri Grawl, a 1-3 and a 1-1 with a blue skip. So this one's called Dreadful Influence because you've got the blue and yellow skip, so almost anybody could get Dreadnought 2 here very, very easily if they decided to go for it. This is the Dreadnought slice if you want it to be. But also, the influence is annoying and hard to come by here. This is really tricky to make your influence efficient to be spent. In the slices, or in the systems that like are yours by rights, you can really only spend like 4 influence. There's no way to spend 3 influence for the counters. You don't have an easy breakup of that. So you're really inclined to like go to Melon to get that 0-2 to make it a 0-2, a 1-2, and a 1-2. But as we saw with Darian's slice, even that is an annoying way to spend influence. So you're better off going to Centauri to get that 1-3 because at least that is like a more guaranteed command counter. So just getting command counters in this slice is going to be really tricky, and maybe that turns out to be like a really, really terrible problem, but I think it has access to enough money and really good tech skips that I think this slice could come out ahead with it. The other big note for me is this is the slice with the worst access to the wormholes. You've got a supernova in between you and the empty alpha wormhole, and basically every other wormhole is just like on the other side of the map. So don't expect to see essentially any wormhole play in this pie slice.
Yeah, so I think you summed it up really well in that the pitch for this slice is it is like Darian Slice's cousin with much, much better tech path access. I mean, having a blue and a yellow within reach is super cool. I mean, just the yellow and Darien Slice was cool too, but this is plus a blue, which is arguably the best. So
Right. Yeah, definitely.
it's like Fast and Cultured and Darien Slice had a baby
shoved together.
That's what it is. Because you've also got the 4 culturals. If you count both, that's going to be some weird planet trading. Almost all the traits are going to work out that way in every slice, where you've either got 3 or you've got 2, and they're the 4th or the 3rd and the 4th are in the equidistance. So you got to figure out how you're going to make that happen.
Yeah, everybody has more or less access to 4 traits. But again, it's like you're going to be getting into equidistance to do it. There's no way around that. Yes. So we've been having fun here. We've got Revenge of the Gashly. We've got Bento Box. We've got Dreadful Influence. All these names are very suggestive of what's going on. Hunter, will you please introduce us to our 4th slice in the top right position?
Oh, okay. This one's called Arby's.
Arby's, like the roast beef and chicken franchise. Arby's. It's called Arby's.
And so if Arby's, you don't, when you pick it, you have to say, "I'm thinking Arby's."
I'm thinking Arby's.
So if somebody's like, "Which slice are you picking?" You got to be like, "I'm thinking Arby's."
I was thinking Arby's. I don't know. Love that chicken from Popeyes. On the right, you've got a asteroid field. On the left, this is the only slice with extra with a planet system, but that's because we'll get to it. You've got Quan to your left. You've got the beta wormhole with a 2-1 adjacent to you. And going on your way to Mechatol Rex, in front of your system is Vetha 2, which is a 2-2. This is the only slice that does not have a 2-planet system adjacent to their home system. Instead, they have 2 1-planet systems adjacent to their home system. And then on the path to Mechatol Rex, they have a Meharzul 1-3 with a red skip. To their right, equidistant is, of course, Centauri Grawl. And on their left, equidistant is Cason Raron, a 1-2 and a 0-3. Arby's is weird. It's who wants roast beef from a fast food chain? I don't know how to define it. No, we call it Arby's for 2 reasons. One, you've got easy access to basically 3 culturals, and you've got good access to 2 hazardous, and you also have good access to a blue skip and a red skip. So it's R and it's B, and it's R and it's B, and it's Arby's.
It's Arby's.
So this one is the highest value system in its pie slice. Like, it's the most money you can get. You can do the most with it. That being said, you have to do a little bit more work to get it, right? You have to take 1 extra system, and you got to hold 1 extra system, and that extra system also happens to be a beta wormhole. So you kind of have an extra neighbor that's going to come up later. But so you really have 3 neighbors. Your left side neighbor is going to have a gravity rift coming towards you. So I would say Arby's is a really good slice with really good options in terms of like what you're going to be able to get. There's lots of command counters accessible to Arby's, but all of that is under threat.
Yes.
I will also
I
say
totally agree with that.
This is the one slice where actually getting 4 of one trait is going to be a serious challenge because they only have 3, even including their equidistance.
I'll say this much, though. You also have the best access to 2 wormholes.
Yeah, true.
Yes. Or like you're tied for best, right? So you can get through wormholes to go find other ones. So you've only got 2 hazardous in your slice, but if you go through that beta, there's plenty more hazardous over there. And you've got very few cultural, but if you start digging into your neighbor's slice, there's plenty more to get. So you don't have to go that far to get the rest. But yeah, within your slice and your equidistance, you don't have enough to get those planet traits. And that also ties into like you've got a good slice, but the points are harder to come by.
I expect that because of this slice, we will possibly see an uptick in ghost picks.
Yes.
Guys, I just feel like this would actually be a great slice for the ghosts. You have easy access to a wormhole that they're going to be able to make use of in a way that no one else in this slice is going to be able to.
This is a hard map for wormholes. This map sucks for wormholes. I'll be open about that. This is not a good wormhole map. It is really quite annoying to get around these wormholes.
But Ghost is going to be freaking nasty in it, honestly.
Yeah.
And with the red and the blue skip, that's pretty tasty in my opinion.
Yep.
For
true.
that.
Very true.
What were you going to say, Alec? You wanted to introduce the next slice, maybe?
No, I wanted to just mention that the secret objective, Become the Gatekeeper, is going to be a very serious, if not impossible, task for some people.
Yep.
Yes.
But not for Arby's and not for kind of this side of the map, I would say a little bit more so. So let's do bottom right. Bottom right is a slice that we are calling...
Well, you're calling.
I'm calling it, and it is called Arthur's Dent. Arthur's Dent.
Such a Matt joke. It's not even really a joke, is it? It's just a thing that Matt likes that he just painted on the thing.
I forced into this space game. This is the spaciest of the slices. This is the weirdest slice. This is the most. If you're in Arthur's Dent, you are probably going to have a wild ride because you've got a gravity rift to your right. To your left is an empty system. You've got Dalbutha Exxon adjacent to you, so a 0-2 and a 1-1. But then you've got Lodor on your path to Mechatol Rex, which is a 3-1 with the Alpha Wormhole. Your right equidistant is, of course, Cason Rayron. And your left equidistant is Starpoint New Albion, a 3-1 and a 1-1 with a green skip. So you have really good access to both of the wormholes, Alpha and Beta, both good sides of the wormholes. But one of them is through a gravity rift. And you can use this gravity rift for all kinds of things. But I think if you're not doing ghosts in Arby's, you might be doing ghosts in Arthur's Dent.
Sure.
Because this is just a wild slice for getting out and getting stuff done. Really good for cultural traits.
Yep.
I think it's really good
for
anybody that is... I think this is the slice that if you are planning on going for Mechatol, this is probably the best staging area for that. Lodor is probably the only planet that neighbors Mechatol where it would be worthwhile to put a space dock on it and then stage straight from there. Anybody else trying to do that, like Saldor is a 2-2, and all the rest of them are 1s. Right. So yeah, and this was kind of true even before, because I believe this is kind of similar to the setup in the prelims as far as what planets are adjacent to Mechatol.
Right.
It just feels more true on this map, mostly because I think it's going to be more of a bloodbath. So having a good staging area right next to Mechatol will be a huge deal.
I'll say this about Arthur's Dent. The strangest thing about it to me is you have no guaranteed tech skips, and the only tech skip even really very close to you is the green skip on New Albion. Everyone else has 2 tech skips, 1 in their slice and 1 equidistant. Except for Arthur's Dent. So Arthur's Dent has a tech skip problem.
Anticipating this slice being actually really, really, really good for the Necro.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. It's got good value to it compared to some of the others, but then the tech skip thing will be a problem, but not an issue for
and being able to fly through that gravity rift to snipe off the odd carrier or cruiser or something from Arby's.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great.
So I think the relationship between Arby's and Arthur's Dent is going to be probably the wildest, I feel like, neighbor-wise. Bento Box, obviously, is going to be pretty tame. Revenge of the Gashly is probably going to get mixed up and kind of maybe more of a sad slice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Before we can cover all the relationships, let's talk about our final slice. There's lots of slices in this pie. Some of them are crazy, Arthur's Dent and Arby's. Right. Some of them are kind of boxed in. You got your bento box, but some of them are just a classic pepperoni slice.
Yeah, classic pepperoni.
You can't go wrong with a classic pepperoni.
How dare you introduce this one? Because this is my baby.
This is your joke. Do you want to take it again? What's Hunter's introduction sound like to this one?
The last one is called Classic Pepperoni.
Good, very good.
Yeah, I nailed it. Yeah. Nailed it.
So classic pepperoni is an asteroid field on your right and the empty beta wormhole on your left. In front of you is Tekaran Torkan, the 2-0 and the 0-3. And on your path to Mechatol is Thibba, the 1-1 with a blue skip. Your right equidistant is Starpoint New Albion, and your left equidistant is Barrig Lerda 4.
Yeah.
This one just this kind of has it all.
I'm going to say right out the gate, if every single draft does not go, player number 1 picks this slice, they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You better have a very specific game plan if the first thing that happens is this slice getting picked.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's efficient. Tekaran Torkan is a great system. You have a free command counter right outside your home system, plus your 2 resources. You have the best resource value system on your left equidistant. You have one of the I would say the third best system in the game to me is Starpoint New Albion. The numbers don't necessarily support that, but I think Starpoint New Albion is amazing. You have a green and a blue skip. The two best tech paths in the game are green and blue. Really, the only thing that hurts this one is that empty beta wormhole that gives you direct access to Arby's. So more or less, you are neighbors with Revenge of the Gaslight and Arthur's Den, but you are also just as many systems away from Arby's home system. So you have 3 neighbors.
Yeah. The other thing is you kind of got a rough shot when it comes to planet types. Not super great.
Hazardous is maybe doable, but you need both equidistance to do it.
Both equidistance and then one more additional. So they are kind of the only ones super in that situation. Actually, there's another one in that situation we already talked about. But I think it's probably best overall in like a really simple way, but not necessarily it's not like the others are horrible and then this one is just really good. It's just this one is kind of de facto better.
That's why it's classic pepperoni. It feels like anybody you could pick this first because you could get any faction here and still be okay,
and it'd probably be fine.
You can just take this and be fine. The only reason you do any other slice is because you picked your faction first and you're ending up somewhere. But classic pepperoni is like, I can take this and I will probably do just fine. Especially if you're drafting, I don't know how these semis drafts are going to go. I suspect they'll be different than our prelims drafts just because of people knowing what the strengths of the map are and like the ideas of what is good has shifted a little bit. But yeah, I really think classic pepperoni is going to be kind of the go-to.
I think this map is going to be more debatable in general, though.
For sure.
And of course, as always, we totally invite that. Please rip it to pieces. Like we said before, it's not like the goal of this map is not to perfectly balance it. Right. But if you got something, if you think you've got something that fits with the spirit, if you've got something that goes with the spirit of this map that fixes it, please throw it out. And also just like, I always love a good complaint, so go ahead and throw them out there.
But my big encouragement to people is like, more or less, this is the map. So what always gets me about criticism of sometimes these maps is like people want to just shift it into something they like more and not necessarily something that actually fixes it. The reason we made the fixes on the last map was because they legitimately fixed what we were trying to do. They saw what we were trying to do and they went, well, why didn't you do this instead? Because it improves on that idea. Just shifting things around because you wish the numbers were slightly different. Like all of these slices, I'll say this much: the version of it that Hunter and Root and I are looking at right now is covered in numbers that are numbers that I have calculated like 900 times to figure out if this map is balanced. And I'll say this much: total values between all systems, including equidistance, everything, all of your slices are within 4 numbers of each other. That's collected, resource, and influence value. They're all within 4. With your equidistance and your pie slices included. They're all within 2 resources of every slice individually. So like none of these numbers are far off. This is not a grossly imbalanced map. All of the imbalances are like nuance imbalances, right? Things we're talking about of like weird inefficiencies rather than like this one has 6 resources and this one has 1 resource. That's not here. This isn't, that's not what this is.
Yeah, what I like about it is it's balanced, but it's impossible. It's a balanced map if no one plays on it. Like it can only be a balanced map with no players. With players, it cannot be balanced.
Absolutely haywire.
There will absolutely be no way. Apart. You will not be able to divide this up in a way that is balanced. Even if everyone takes their left equidistant, it will not be balanced. That will throw it completely out of whack.
Right. You are forced into the center and you are forced into each other on this map. There are only 2 directions and it is towards everybody else on this map.
I want to throw this out there too, like just in case those of you who might try and tear this map a new one and like have some fix, which again, I am totally encouraging you to do. If you find something good, we totally would love to steal it and just have it in the map. But I feel like the way I'm thinking about this map is every slice is including the equidistance. We're just going to pretend as if you can get all of those planets that are available to you, even though we know you can't. And as long as that's balanced for every slot,
it's up to you to figure out the rest.
See, like that's the idea. So then you it's basically guaranteeing that it's balanced, but there's no way you're going to be able to do it all. So it won't be. It will not be.
Impossibly balanced.
One thing I will say, the only thing that my favorite slice is obviously classic pepperoni because the name is so great. But I am kind of a little bit bummed that there's like kind of a de facto best. And if you've got an argument for why it's actually not, it's actually bad and we're idiots, that's fine too.
I'll say this much though, like so many people, myself included, thought Slice of the Gaslight was best and
it wasn't.
Did not prove to be. But talking about the numbers, it's worth noting, tournament-wise, this is only going to get played 3 times, guys.
Yeah.
The prelims is the only round with lots of, like, the prelims map is the only thing we will have done that's going to get, like, the numbers that we got out of it. This is going to get 3 games, and then we move on to the knockout round. We play a 5-player map with 3 games, and then we have a finals map that is 1 game.
Yeah.
So these maps are not nearly as, like, the function of them is not like to be played by everybody. Obviously, I would love people to play on this map for a long time, and that's why it exists. But for this tournament, like the intent of it is like, hey, we expect these 18 very good players to know what their plan is on this really tough map.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy. Did we talk? We did the thing we said we would do.
Boy.
Do we need to do errata? Is there errata? Do we have to do errata?
What was last week's episode?
Just
there's no
tournament.
errata. No, it really
tournament
was
stuff.
just tournament updates. I am going to tell you that you should go to Space Cats Pod on Twitter, at Space Cats Pod, for game updates and announcements, and also our Facebook, Space Cats Peace Turtles, for announcements, and you can ask me questions at 2 a.m. Go to the Twilight Imperium subreddit for posts and discussion. Our Board Game Geek has RoboFish there. Patreon, if you want to be a part of this show and help us achieve our goals. We haven't talked about this much yet, but like Gen Con's been happening kind of behind the scenes of all of this. We're prepping all of our stuff for Gen Con this year. I know you don't have a Gen Con video to like show for last year, but like it is going to come out. This tournament has just like crushed my schedule, but the prelims being over helps a lot, because the burden of the prelims was like, we have to do 1 million games every single weekend. But these next few rounds are actually going to be taken a little bit slower. So I'm going to have some free time again. And I'm trying to get this thing out. The 1-year anniversary of our Patreon is actually the day after this episode comes out, February 20th.
Aww.
So like the day we decided to open up a Patreon so we could go to Gen Con. We're a 1 year away from that mark, and I intend to have that video to you, obviously, before the next Gen Con. That would be ridiculous if it took me that long, but certainly long before that. It's going to be coming soon. Please also go to our Discord for fun conversations. You can get in on all the tournament discussion that's been happening, and you can get some of your Patreon benefits, like organizing our Good Yin Brotherhood games, which we have one this weekend. Very excited. Hunter, you and I get to play the board game that we talk about.
Not
over
together,
and over and over
though.
again. We're not
Separately.
playing together.
We're not playing together. Thank God. Thank God.
You can rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. And I want to thank some Patreoners. Our Space Kitties, I want to thank Box, Jim Bov, Frederick Durston, Patience is a Virtue, and Nathan Swenson.
Oh. Hey, wait, do we have a play of the week?
I've got a quick play of the week set up.
Oh,
and ready.
you do? Wow. How?
Here we go.
You're fast.
This one is brought to you by Joey Schofield, who did play in the tournament. So this is a tournament player's play of the week.
Wait,
it's a quick
Joey,
one.
like from the Gen Con?
No, that's
from
a different
Gen Con
Joey.
Oh, okay.
That's not Gen Con Joey. So
Gen Con Joey.
play of the week is: Arborek somehow crawls from 1 point at the end of the 3rd round to 8 points at the end of round 6. The new Stage 2 objective is to discard 6 command counters, and Arborek has just enough. At the end of the status phase, he plays Political Stability to keep Imperial, guaranteeing his victory in the first round of turns, we should say. The next round, first round of turns. 2 sabotages have been played. Arborek shares that he has the 2 remaining sabotages, so no one sabotages the Political Stability. But the agenda phase reveals Ixthian Artifact. Hakan, whose entire fleets are on and around Mechatol, reluctantly agrees that we have to take down the Arborek. The rest of the table thinks that this means that Hakan needs lightwave deflectors, infantry 2, or something else for the inevitable invasion of Arborek's home. Risking everything, Hakan gets the table to vote for Ixthian Artifact, and he rolls the die. It's a 6, which means we get the tech. But then Hakan researches up to Quantum Data Hub node, which was only possible due to a previously thought useless agenda giving one of Hakan's planets a yellow tech skip. Hakan then pulls off his own great surprise by taking Imperial from Arborek and wins in the action phase of the next round.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's a good one.
That's
a really
very
good one.
Wow.
Tricks the whole table into giving him the vote to sacrifice his own stuff.
So
and
cool.
scores the dice or the coin flip. I love it.
I wish I could have been that person and just pretended like, oh, we're in dire straits, but if only you would all be willing to do this, then perhaps we can slow him down. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah,
play.
I would have really played that up.
All
That's a
right.
good one.
Well, next time we get into this, we won't have a semis game this coming weekend, but like, let's get this map happening. If there's any changes, we need the changes pretty fast. So next week's episode, if there are any changes, they'll be displayed in that, and then we're into the semis.
Wow.
So get ready, guys. We've got one weekend off, and then we have to get back to our job.
My body is almost ready.
Yes, my body is prepped.
Alec literally broke his back for us.
Oh wait, I want to thank Alec for being on the show.
I really do.
Thank you, Alec, for
Thanks.
being on the show.
I'm happy to finally be on.
I'll never be able to thank Alec enough.
Thanks for being in the gauntlet with us through these prelims. I'm glad the next few rounds are going to be easier and more, I'll say more fun. We've been having our fun, but it's been a
slog. People who
too.
watch the
There's been
videos will
moments.
have noticed by now that I get a little grumpy
Alec
at the
has
end of
lost
games
his
sometimes.
mind, right?
That's true. Hey, wait, are we still in the show? Or
Oh shoot! I gotta
Are
turn
we
it
in
off
the
right
show
now.
still?
Oh my gosh! No, we gotta.
we're
turn
not.
It off
We're
right
not in
now.
the show, are we still? I thought we were just hanging out, but are we in the show? Do we have to stay in the show? Do I have to stay at? Are you guys still here? Hey, I can't hear you guys. Hey, are we still in the show? Do I have to turn the show off yet? I don't understand. You guys are just like talking. Are you guys talking without me? I don't understand. I guess we're not in the show anymore. I don't know. I guess I'll just go then. All right. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles, and thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.